Oh,
Take it away.
it's 28, yeah.
28, episode 28.
28. Yeah, welcome everybody to episode 28 of Heresy Hammer. I am John. I'm joined by Rob. Lee is somewhere. Do we know where?
He's working today, saving lives.
Is he?
Yeah.
Fair enough. So we've got a very special guest from the other side of several ponds. You'll recognize him from previous shows and also being good at painting. Say hello, Adam.
Hello, Adam.
Fantastic, thank you. That was not rehearsed in any way, shape, or
Thanks
form.
for having me on again.
It's quite
It's
our
a pleasure.
pleasure. The reason that we've got you on today is because we need people with a better painting eye than me to cast over our main topic of conversation today, which is going to be the best armies in the world. Not the best armies in the world, kind of currently now. Oh, by the way, we are going to be kind of talking about some armies that we kind of feel have kind of moved the needle a little bit in terms of a bit of a sort of a timeline of kind of how Heresy Hobby sort of started and how Heresy Hobby is today, and looking at some of the stuff in the middle that we felt kind of made a real difference. But we will get onto the meat and the potatoes of the main show after we go through the correspondence section. First up, go and follow us all on Instagram. Rob doesn't need it because he's got loads. I do. So go follow me at D6_miniatures. And if you're not already aware, Adam is at Full Circle Hobby. Sponsors. Beowulf Miniatures Printing. Lovely guys. Just lovely. Printing some lovely miniatures to a lovely standard. So one of the kind of two one of the two print on demand services that support us really heavily at kind of events. If you've kind of got anything that you kind of need printing up and don't have the wherewithal or the intellectual capacity like me to organize your own printing, then visit Beowulf. So you can visit them at beowulfminiatures.com. Beowulf_miniature_printing on Instagram, or Beowulf Miniatures Printing on Facebook to sort of view their catalog, see what they've got, and commission to do some bits for you. And super special thanks to Curtain Games and Oakhampton Games. If you're in the Southwest area and you're looking for a place that's going to host you some events, be it Heresy, be it 40k, be it Kill Team, Titanicus, Aeronautic and Imperialis, that's what I'm doing recently, Star Wars Legion, whatever it may be, then check out their shops in Crediton and Oakhampton down in Devon. They've also just about to relaunch their web store. So they did have, and they might still have, a big old sale going on as well. So they're clearing the decks in order to get a load of new stock in and revamping their online store. So you can visit them at curtaingames.co.uk, at Curtain Games on Instagram, at Curtain Games on Facebook. And there's also some Facebook groups if you're interested in getting involved in some of the kind of like organized play they do. Cryptic Cabin needs no introduction. They've been supporting us for a long old time. Very local to Rob. I believe, Rob, you're hosting a class there coming up, are you?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
It's lucky someone's fucking doing it, right?
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah, there's got a course there. It's £125. We will take you through how to paint a Ballistus or Redemptor Dreadnought, not necessarily Heresy specific, but I think a much better canvas to learn painting on than most other things I've found. We will take you through how to airbrush that. We'll take you through how to weather it. We'll take you through how to apply transfers. We'll learn how to do oils and streaking, all those things to get a Ballistus Dreadnought to look exactly like that. So you too can be featured in Warhammer community articles, just like me.
Where can people go to find tickets, Rob?
You need to go to Cryptic Cabin, and under their events page or classes page, you will find it there. Or you can go to my socials, Instagram, Facebook, and you can find the link there. Or for the bargain price of £125 for an entire weekend, you can join me and do some painting.
If people also want to buy a ticket and click through our affiliate link in the show notes, then also helps us out enormously as well, because, you know, I need that gold-plated speedboat. So, the best armies in the world. We put a question mark down there because this is obviously a subjective topic. What we're not saying is this is the definitive list of the best armies in the world as far as heresy goes. This is just some. So to give you a bit of context, we kind of raised this topic a little while ago, and it kind of we kind of went down a bit of a rabbit hole with it. So what we thought we'd do is we put up a little post on Instagram at the start of the week just to say, like, this is what we're going to be doing for the next main show. We're going to be looking at the kind of the timeline of hobby and heresy. We want to know the best armies. That's not necessarily the best individual miniatures. We want like the best armies. Who are your favorite armies? And I think we were pretty taken aback with the response.
Yeah, and there were some names that kept on cropping up time and time
exactly.
again, which is super interesting. And a few others that perhaps we haven't seen before who've made it onto the list. But unfortunately, because the show isn't 10 hours long, we can't include everybody. But we think, exactly as Jon said, these are ones that have moved the needle. These are seminal armies. These are important armies in the development of the Horus Heresy style. As well. So yeah, that to look forward to, I think.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it all morning. Right. We've got a bit of news. We due to the constant need to sell tickets for things because every event we put on sells out. We are hosting another. We managed to squeeze another event, and we might even actually be squeezing in another event, but we'll hopefully bring you that news pretty soon. But Rob, do you want to tell us about the Battle Royale?
Yeah. So forget narrative, forget campaigns, forget all of the things you associate with Horus Heresy.
Forget balance.
Forget balance. None of that. We are essentially doing a battle royale, 3,000 point mega mashup where you have to bring a Primarch. There are some other limitations as well. The books will be directly from, the missions will be directly from the books, and we shall see who will be the new War Master. Will Horus reign supreme still, or will somebody else take his space? There are prizes. There are going to be awards, but it will be dudes fighting dudes over who shall be the War Master. So make sure you grab your ticket. Tickets are £45, and when you check out, there is also an option to buy a food ticket on top of that as well. We've already sold lots of tickets, but we have a few left over. So if you want to make your way to the event, then please go on over to Heresy Hammer's Eventbrite and grab a ticket.
Super. Adam, you much experience playing with Primarchs in this edition? You got Magnus out many times?
Absolutely not. Partly because I think Primarchs are a lot of fun, but they're a little sort of live in their little ecosystem of their own. When you're sort of talking about the game and the mechanics of the game and the balance of the game, if you want to sort of go down that route. But secondarily, Magnus is also really, really terrible this edition. It's probably the worst. Probably the worst Primarch.
I don't know, mate. You've clearly not read Perturabo's rules. So, yeah, I mean, like, this is going to be a very kind of casual weekend. It's literally just you're going to play 4 games. You're going to bring your big toys, bring your Primarch, bring your daddy, and we're going to see whose daddy is the daddiest.
That is exactly the best way to describe it. Absolutely.
Cool. Wonderful stuff. This is also the call for the last opportunity to be able to get your hands on the Castle Crusher miniature that we've had produced by Beowulf 3D and sculpted by Wilf Diverging Realm. So for those of you who've watched any of our shows for what feels like the last 400 years, we've been banging on about this. But the miniatures are being printed as we speak. We'll be sending the first batch out. So for those who've been subscribed for the last 6 months at our Praetor level tier over on Patreon, we'll be sending those out at the beginning of next month. But because of the way we run these things, there is only a 6-month cycle with which to join, and August is the last month in which you can subscribe to the Praetor tier in order to guarantee yourself this kit. So The kit contains enough parts to make 2 complete miniatures, with a variety of head options. You've got 2 torsos, one cloaked, one not. Loads of different weapon options too. Yeah, this is kind of it, really. If you've been on the fence about getting this thing, then this is the last opportunity, really.
This is it, yeah. You won't be able to, after this, you won't be able to get it because the cycle basically stops. But we have nice little metallic cards made up for them. And
each
then
will be individually numbered.
Exactly. Each one will tell you, because we've had 60 made. Remember, these are gifts to our patrons. You cannot purchase these. And it will tell you the number of which you have. Somebody will get one of 60. And then also who it was printed by as well, because the printing will be done by both Beowulf and Gator 3D as well.
Yep. So we are destroying the file at the end of the month. We're going to go back to Beowulf and Gator's various places of work and set them on fire, so that no more can be made.
Never be made. That's it. Yeah, this is it.
Yeah, so this is not going to be available for purchase at any point. No. This is literally a gift for our Praetor level patrons. As you may well know, we do a special gift bundle every 6 months of subscriptions as a big thank you from us, and yeah, this is the most special one so far. And then we'll have to think of something equally special for the next 6 months, which is a problem for next month.
Yeah, and then in fact, in the image, you can see that Josh is playing with his first bundle, where we sent out some effective markers and some cards and some dice and things like that as well. So that was our first bundle, and you can see Josh playing with those. Cool
beans. So if you do want more Heresy Hammer, you don't just get free stuff. Oh no. You get a whole raft of additional content. So we have several tiers on the Patreon. The most popular are the top and the bottom, as it always tends to be. Just the entry level tier, which is £3, gets you 2 additional shows every month, where Rob and I, or Rob and Lee, or Rob and Rob will go into tactical depth on a certain topic. The last month, we've been looking at the additional kind of deep diving on some of the stuff in Siege of Chthonian, namely around Decurions.
Yeah.
I'm very keen, Rob, to talk about knights.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I'm keen to talk about my list from the event just gone. So I think that's our 2 months for August, or our 2 episodes for August sorted.
Absolutely. So £3 gets you all the additional shows, plus all of the event material that we produce for all our events. So all of the mission cards, all the mission packs, all of the other bits and bobs that we're supplying, including the upcoming mission pack for my event at the end of next month. Will all be available to download for you to use at home. You also get access to the Heresy Hammer Lodge over on Facebook, where you can talk about lists, where you can talk about people you don't like, where you can talk about the comings and goings of the world, but mainly your heresy and heresy hobby. We'll also be drawing next month for those subscribed at the middle tier, the next miniatures giveaway. So every 4 months, we choose someone at random using a random number generator, and that person will receive a Forge World console or special character that will be painted by one of us, and this time it's Lee's. So I hope you're patient.
Could be waiting a while.
Yeah,
arriving in 2025.
Yeah. Exactly, when he's not out fighting fires.
If he hasn't done it in 3 months, I will pick it up for him.
I think as of last count, we were 149 patrons, so it'd be super lovely if one of you could see fit to give us some of your incredibly hard-earned cash. We know it is at the moment, and become our 150th. We will love you a long, long, long time. So head over to patreon.com, search for Heresy Hammer, and you'll find us all there. I think we've already got something like 34 hours worth of content going back.
Yeah, we've got loads, absolute loads.
So yes, do that. Here he is again, painted. I promised that I was going to have mine painted this week, but then I went out and got drunk a lot, and that didn't happen. So here is the one that Rob's painted again.
There he is.
Cool. It's Rob's turn to choose the hashtag Heresy Hammers this episode. So again, for those who might be living under a rock or are new to the show, we ask you to post your pictures on Instagram and use the hashtag Heresy Hammer to show us your what you've been up to, and then we'll go through and select some of our favorites. Not all, because there are several thousand, and we are just three men.
7,000, actually. 7,000.
7 over 9,000. So, Rob, what do you like about this? What made you pick this dude?
I mean, what didn't I like? I mean, I particularly loved the base, which was a marble base and kind of in different color slabs. And I thought it looked absolutely brilliant. A metallic scheme for the Emperor's Children, which I always think is great because it kind of really emulates that polished sheen to their armor. So great one from Green Company _painting.
I don't think I follow this guy. I'm feeling embarrassed. I'm going to follow him right this second. I'm going to follow him. By the way, I also think congratulations on doing a marble effect that actually looks like marble.
Yeah, because sometimes it does not.
Sometimes it just doesn't look like marble.
No.
Adam, anything to add to this whilst I frantically search for this man?
And it is the metallic purple variety too, which is quite rarely seen.
Yeah.
It's pretty unique within itself. But I do agree, yeah, the marble's the standout here. I really like it. It feels natural. It feels within the scale of the miniature as well, because a lot of the time, I think the unrealistic marble sort of comes down to like, the veins and that sort of stuff being a little bit too large or too broad and whatnot. But I think, he's captured the look and the feel really well.
I think he's absolutely smashed it. Right, whilst your mouth is moving, why don't you tell us about this Dreadnought?
Who's this by? Painted Teeth?
By Painted Teeth, yeah.
And it looks like the new plastic variety as well.
Yes.
The first thing that sort of jumps out to me is the warmth of the yellow.
Yeah. Good.
It's not too orange in the in the shadows, or too green. Sometimes, Imperial Fist can be a little bit symptomatic of having some green in the shadows, but that's probably got a little bit to do with color choice. It feels rich, in the shadows. It's nice and warm. The red head stands out a lot. And I like the tight highlights that he's done on the black there. Even though it's like a bluey sort of color, it still reads as black, which is pretty important. Doesn't read as too blue or too gray. And I think he's done a really great job.
I think he's done a phenomenal job. I've also just realised as well, he has the same loadout on the same base as my Leviathan staring up at me from my shelf. So I think that means we're going to have to throw down at some point. Yeah. So we're going to have to...
he's a trendsetter too.
Leviathan off. Absolutely. It is a trend now. More than one is a trend. Cool. Right. This is the Lion from Hardy. I don't think I follow this guy either, to be honest with you.
No, I've tried to choose people that we haven't necessarily seen before.
Oh my God. Bloody hell. Right. I feel very bad now. I mean, not that bad, obviously, but sort of bad. This is really, really good. Again, I think I quite like the kind of stark, like the kind of like really high contrasted edge highlighting. I think sometimes edge highlighting gets such a bad rep, mainly from people who are lazy, who just want to airbrush and highlight and leave it alone.
Yeah, fair enough. The amount of work that is involved with this particular miniature is...
Oh man, I don't want to paint this guy.
I've done 4 now, and you finish the line, and then you're like, oh, I've got another 6 Night Lords miniatures to paint, plus the actual base itself. So anybody who can start and finish the line deserves an accolade, I think.
Deserves some respect
to Hardy Miniatures. Well done, very well done.
Nice, mate. Cool, super duper stuff. What's going on here?
Well, Voodoo Conversions. Yeah, Voodoo Conversions has done a lot of late, and he's done a really cool Malagurst conversion holding a corner banner, and he's kind of like done some conversions to him. But I thought these were some great world eaters, and I thought they were like meteor hammers that look better than the Forge World meteor hammers. I have absolutely no idea where the spiked heads come from.
Absolutely,
but the one in the center looks really, really, really cool. So I felt like we had to put it on because they're kind of like rampagers made of Mark 6. So I thought these were brilliant, really worth showing off. So definitely go follow Voodoo Conversions.
Man, I love these. I actually pulled some Rampages out of a bag the other day to assemble, and then I realised that they were just fucking tiny, and put them straight back in the bag and thought,
Yeah,
nah,
so,
gonna
yeah.
go do something else.
Yeah, they're very small. Put them on cork bases, right, just to elevate them slightly.
Ah, poor fucking sods. Oh, finally, something that I feel versed talking about, which is the Iron Fourth, the true Iron Legion. So I think these are all prints.
Yeah, they look it actually.
The fact that you can't tell if they're all prints or not is just real testament to how good 3D printing is these days. So this is from That Phoenician Fella, which I think is a wonderful name. I just, yeah, Keith, obviously, as you know, I have a deep-seated love for the Iron Warriors, and I have been threatening to redo them now for what feels like all year.
Actually, yeah.
And I think I'm about ready to kind of dive back in now, finish some other projects for some people, and real life is sort of calming down a little bit. I think these are cool. Do you know what I really like? I really like the modulation of the stripes. Like, I like the fact that they're not like particularly like uniform in terms of like we've got some thin striping, some fat striping, some striping on this, some striping on that. I think these are really, really good. I think these are really thematic, and I really like the super red bases. It just feels very Talon to me.
Yeah, I assume this guy has also done some Emperor's Children as well. So I don't know if he's maybe making like a Angel Exterminatus kind of force here, which would be quite cool.
Oh, wouldn't it just? Wouldn't it just? Apart from the fact that that book ruined Fulgrim for me. That's not true, actually. The book Fulgrim ruined Fulgrim for me.
I thought Angel Exterminatus was fantastic. I thought it was.
No, I think it is. No. Actually, you clearly, Rob, you only listened to the first part of what I said.
Sorry. Fulgrim ruined Fulgrim for you.
Correct. There you go. So you did listen. You chose to ignore. Adam, what do you want to talk to us about this?
This is cool, right?
This is really cool. Yeah.
Alfarius did nothing wrong. I think the blue's soft and different for Alpha Legion. It's really nice, and it plays off the white really well. It's almost like an off-white.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they really work hand in hand together. It gives the vehicle that sort of natural militarized feel with the color choices. The weathering's top notch. I really love the subtle dust across the top and along the tracks and stuff like that. I think it's just tasteful.
Yeah, that's a great word to describe it. I think really tasteful, and it's not bling in the way that metallic Alpha Legions often are. And I think a whole army painted in this kind of scheme, certainly like an armored army, mechanized army, would be really, really cool, I think.
Yeah, see, I was just looking back through his Instagram because I was sure that he had like a sort of purpley blue metallic transitional kind of color shift on a lot of his other stuff, which I think he does. But this is
an experiment.
This is fit.
Yeah, it's great.
Really, really
encourage more of this scheme because it looks absolutely brilliant.
Oh yeah, 100%. Do more of this. Introducing that white into the blue is just the absolute hotness. So
yeah, well done.
Yeah.
We've also had actually quite a lot of news since last time we recorded the main show. I thought this was going to be quite a barren section. And actually, when I was looking through, I was like, oh no, they've got fuck tons of stuff to talk about. So we saw at the Not 40k preview. Have we really not done a main show since that?
No, we only did one last month because I was poorly, so we had to.
Of course.
Adam didn't I? So yeah.
Yeah. Bro. So obviously we knew the Plastic Lancer was coming. It was not necessarily an enormous stretch to think we were going to see an Acheron and a Castigator as well. And look, here they are. I think we were kind of all hoping that all of the sprues would be in one box, but they're not. Yeah. And I feel that feels like a bit of a misstep, unless of course they're going to do what they did with the Contemptor and the Leviathan and sell the additional sprues separately. I think that would be a sensible thing to do.
Yeah. So
are you excited for these? What's your thoughts?
I'll let Adam. Adam can go first, I think.
I don't know if I'm excited for them, to be honest. I don't think it's something that majority of Heresy players wanted to see released in plastic, even though I think it's a terrific thing that they've got the technology to make this sort of thing in plastic. I think it's amazing. I'm sure the kit will be amazing to put together.
Yeah.
It looks flawless
Yeah.
and identical to the resin. And having assembled and painted a couple of resin ones as well, the kit is phenomenal and it is like super fun to paint. I just don't know if the timing of the release was right for this.
Yeah,
What are your
Okay.
thoughts?
that's a fair. I think that's a fair assessment. I think the issue you've got is partly one of rules, which is that if you want to throw one of these in, you don't expect a lot to do stuff because they just aren't game changing. I think on the battlefield. So then, park the gaming element aside. I think that these are fantastic if you want a centerpiece for your army, either to display or to have on armies on parade, right? Or as a modeling opportunity. And you go, I just want like a sorbet, a night sorbet, just to cleanse my palate. And these will be a fantastic opportunity for you to do something completely different other than a space marine. And you will have an enormous amount of fun doing it. I think an enormous amount of pride when it's like all assembled as well. And so I think that I would say to people, pick one up, but look at it as a fantastic modeling opportunity than necessarily a sort of a game changing. It won't change your gaming experience. I think if anything, you'll probably be a little bit disappointed. But for me, I think £125 is just a little bit too much, and I think I would have liked to have seen it start at 100 and then being sold for 80. I think that would have been probably a more reasonable cost for one of these, because I think that perhaps it's just slightly bigger than a Kratos. So it would have been nice to see it as the same sort of price tag as the Kratos route. But saying that, I think grab one as a amazing modeling opportunity. And the final thing I'd say is that I'm not sure if you guys have seen the unboxings yet, but it comes with amazing transfer sheets. So
Oh my god!
So long, people have not been unable to do House Malanax, a really awesome created by Mark Bedford. But there are loads of House Malanax transfers that are top quality.
Worth it. It's a £20 transfer sheet alone inside that box, which I think does go some way.
Yeah.
So I'm going to both wholeheartedly agree and also disagree with you at the same time.
Okay.
I totally understand. So I also think weird time to bring it out. I think truth if they want to sell these, they should have brought these out at the end of November, because they would be on everyone's Christmas list as like a really good, like, oh, I don't know what's out for Christmas. Get me a night. I'll fucking pop a night together. That'd be great.
Yeah.
I agree with Rob as someone who is literally painting a Cerastus Knight as a palette cleanser. The moment I'm painting a House Divine Lancer, and again, House Divine on the transfer sheet for the first time ever. Bosh. So if anyone is planning to pick one of these up and doesn't want to use the House Divine decals, hit me up. Happy to pay for them. Send them over. Need those. But I think they can be quite good in game, but more in if you kind of look at it as a Questoris Nice household as opposed to just a standalone Lord of War. And I think that's something that we want to come to in the Tacticas this month. So if you are Knight curious when it comes to Cerastus and Armigas specifically, then head over to Patreon and jump on and watch the Tactica videos that will be coming up over the next kind of few weeks. Anyway, I think these are a big success. I would like them to be a tiny bit cheaper, but I think also as well, if they were never going to be, probably they're a tiny bit cheaper, they would be less money than the Questoris Knight, which is smaller and shitter. So
yeah, okay, yeah, I hadn't considered that. Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah.
I cannot believe we haven't discussed this. When I saw this on the PowerPoint, I was like, are we really fucking doing this now, are we?
Yeah. But Adam, why don't you go? What's your thoughts on this?
I was just going to do the complete opposite of what Lee would say, and I just couldn't give two shits about this game.
Lee is so keen for us to fully embark down a 30k epic route.
It's not for me. It's not for me. I'll just leave it at that, I think.
Rob, is it for you?
So I have, like the night, I've got mixed feelings on this. So number one, I need to play the game. I need somebody to lend me their army and play the game before making any choices about this, because it could be a fun little game that hopefully takes no more than an hour. That's what I want. I wanted it. I was a bit upset that it was on I think a 5x4 they suggested. What I wanted was on a little 2x2. I could sit opposite my partner on one tile and then play. I think I've got question marks around the Titanicus elements. I've got quite a big Titanicus, two quite sizable maniples. I think that from what I understand, it's going to be like a really slimmed down version of Titanicus, because I think Titanicus is quite a complicated game. You know, it's not just a pick up and play game. It's got lots of nuances to it. So if I can bring my Titanicus into it, then I would be quite excited about it. I have absolutely no interest in painting teeny tiny infantry. I would only go for a tank force. So I hope there are different options for allowing your armies just to be either tank based or, you know, contemptor based or dreadnought based, whatever. And again, I have absolutely no interest in solar auxilia. So I think this box would be totally wasted on me, which is, from my understanding, this is the box that you can buy. This is the initial.
This is the launch box. Yeah.
Yeah. So I imagine it will come with rules and dice and things like that. So I think there are lots of question marks for me. It doesn't float my boat the same way that it does Lee's, because Lee's super keen, but I'm going to reserve judgment until I play, because it might be the best game we've ever played. We just don't know until we give it a go.
Okay, so I never played Epic the first time round. However, I did play War Master, which was the small scale fantasy game, and it was a genuinely brilliant game. Really, really good. Really thematic. I thought it's worked in the way that like large scale war might do on the tabletop, at like large scale as in the physical number of stuff that you like is present, as opposed to the size. When this was previewed, I was a bit like, oh, okay, cool. And then as we've seen a little bit more, I'm like, okay, not bad. And then we found out last week it's been delayed by months and months. And I was like, oh, well, fine, it's delayed then. And I think that really kind of taught me all I needed to know, because I actually couldn't give a fuck.
Fair enough. I mean, it's been a roller coaster. I feel it came out of complete nowhere.
Yeah, it came fat air.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks they've hammered us with it, like literally, you know, blow after blow after blow. Major article, lots of new things being shown beyond this box.
Yeah,
Bane blades and Kratos and Leviathans and things like that. And then we just get hit with it's delayed by till basically winter, I think. So
handbrake.
Yeah, very odd way to kind of sell a game. So you build a pipe, and then you've basically, it's a wasted opportunity. I don't know what you would call that in marketing, but it sounds like terrible marketing. But
I think it's quite bizarre. Yeah,
you can't help delays. Inevitably, something
maybe you can. Maybe in certain instances, Rob, delays can be helped. Maybe with reading.
Sorry, Adam. I'm just going to say something. Sorry.
I do want to be positive for a little bit. I think one of the big positives, for me personally anyway, is the amount of new kits that are in this that have been designed in CAD. So obviously, like the solar looking sentinels at the back, right? And I'd assume that, you know, all the tanks as well.
All the Malcadors,
new 3D sculpts, and also in the latest roadmap thing, they also had a far away mentioned
surprise
command squad coming for the legions as well. So I don't know if that's like an extrapolation of the command squads from this box either.
Great point. Yeah, great observation.
Well, I floated a question the other day out there onto the internet, just sort of pushed it out to sea genuinely, and thought, so does the delaying of Legiones Imperialis, do you think that's going to affect the Heresy release schedule? Do you think it's maybe going to bring things forward to fill a void?
Oh, I don't know. Oh, maybe.
This would probably, I would imagine if anyone has got their when you look at release schedule, anyone's got their head screwed at GW, there are 3 games that are largely aimed at the same player base, which typically is Heresy, this, and the Old World. I think are largely going to be bought by, for the most part, the same people, right? So we know that the Old World was rumored to be the end of the year. Now this looks like it's probably going to be end of the year, or maybe now even next year, which is going to leave this kind of like autumn of nothing potentially for those players. So do you think we're going to get something else instead?
Possibly, yeah, possibly. It's exciting.
I think I'm mate. I don't know why I've just got this little kind of thing in the back of my mind for Plastic Solar.
Plastic Solar. We
were told it was going to be.
Yeah, well, you'd assume that they're the mystery army, right?
Yeah.
You'd assume that's the case, and they also previewed the new Rapier launches for them as well.
Yeah, okay.
As well as the new Rapier launches for the Legions, which have sort of changed in design slightly. So yeah,
actually quite excited from that point of view.
Accurate, estimate of what's to come.
Yeah,
I think
let's go with that. Let's call it what it is. Rob says Plastic Rapiers and Plastic Solar definitely coming next month.
Oh my
God. Terrain. This guy. This is cool. I like this, actually.
So do I.
Robert?
I think it's great for. I hope we get a matching one for traitors, but I think this is a fantastic model. I think that it obviously looks like a Templar Brethren character, but I think that the moment you paint it in Ultramarines colors, it will look Ultramarines. I think this is a great. I think also a great alternative Praetor model.
I agree.
One of those sort of Romanesque legions, but yeah, hopefully we get a traitor one. But I think this is absolutely fantastic.
Yep, I think
a lot of people have been ragging on the new console releases a little bit, just because they look a little bit understated. But I actually don't mind that kind of look.
I quite like it.
I think that's good.
Yeah, and like comparing them to like the old Edgar sculpts and that sort of stuff, but the aesthetics changed and it's never going back to the way it used to be. So I think
I think that lots of
what it
transfers
is
good.
Yeah, that forward-facing leg, that tactical rock stepping leg, is such an open canvas for a nice transfer of freehand or something.
Yeah, I think this is a real win. Actually, this one, I think it's. I quite like the Librarian, to be honest, but I thought this one really stands out. That's great.
Yeah, I need to give a. I didn't think the Librarian was much, but I've seen a couple of really good painted ones. I think I've seen Les, who's one of the army painters for the GW Studio, painted one in Sons of Horus colors with just a real simple kind of head swap.
It was just.
Oh
so
man,
good.
just honestly, made it look so much more characterful with just like a little bit of a pose change, a little bit of a head swap, and just painted really, really nicely.
Yeah,
I saw one other as well, a Thousand Suns-esque one that also looked particularly good. We had an FAQ.
Yes.
Go on then.
This was if you found this on the day it was released, well done, because it was tucked away in the exemplary battle documents, which is it had no place there. But subsequently they have changed it. There were 3 small changes. The Sons of Horus Warlord trait, I think just reworded slightly. The Locust Strike, so we did a Tactica on that last month, and we talked about the wording, and the Locust Strike is basically it only applies to one model. And they've just cleared up. It
applies to the whole unit.
What's interesting is that they've actually used the word unit in there, but then later on they've used the word model. But I think they've just clarified it. I didn't think that the Locust Strike needed to be clarified. It was the other Decurion that actually needed to be clarified for me. But they've just decided to clarify this one slightly. And then this first strike. So the first strike, the core missions, really interesting. Basically,
don't play it anymore.
You could, from what I remember, you could basically get 4 victory points on the first turn if you killed like a HQ runner elite, because first strike was there, and also another similar rule was also in there as well. So you could start the game, kill a contemptor, and then be 4 victory points up. But what they've said now is that basically First Strike is gone, so that you're not giving up as many victory points as you were before, which I think is probably a correct change to have made. It's interesting that it even found its way into the rulebook. But yeah, it's right that 4 points from the first turn is such a psychological blow to come back from as well. Like, it's so difficult to come back from that. And I found that basically what was happening, because I played a fair few of these core missions now, is that you just went after somebody's contemptor because you needed the 4 points, and then somebody else came after your contemptor, and then you were just at flat zero by the time you got into turn 2, or 4-4, so you might as well be a 0. So yeah, so just some minor changes there, not necessarily the changes that I would have liked to have seen firstly around the Decurion. I think that
that and casting gold, it's just tidying up the wording a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Cool. I mean, Adam, you played the core missions the other day, right? So this must have come up in your you must have played.
Yeah, it did. It attributed to a couple of extra points.
Yeah.
And just when you read over it the first time, you kind of look at it and you go, hang on, does that look right, or does that sound right to you? And then you go reread it, and then it's even a little bit more like ambiguous, and you're like, oh, hang on a minute, these actually stack, so if I do kill an elite, it's worth 4 points, and it didn't feel right. So it's good that they've clarified that and just wiped it from the mission. So
nice and simple. Cool.
Right, well, that's the end of the first part. We're going to take a short interlude now before we get into the best armies in the world ?
Yeah.
So we're going to go off and get some lunch, and you're going to watch an advert, and then we're going to come back and talk about the best hobby that you'll ever see. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Wonderful. We'll see you in a second.
Welcome back. So, as John said before we went to the break, we're going to be discussing the best armies in the world. So this has been quite a process, and definitely has been, I think, in terms of the preparation, the longest show that we've got ready. I want to talk about the development of the forge or painted style. A friend of ours called Ellis posted the other day about essentially it was about high contrast armies and going back to the roots of the heresy, and I think that sparked a conversation between all of us about the development of the style of painting in the Horus Heresy. So we definitely want to get Adam on board with that, partly because he can see it from a Australian point of view, but also as a very talented painter, he can
upside down.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
The good Melbourne lads.
Exactly. But also, as a very talented painter, he can give he can perhaps give us an insight that, in a way that me and John perhaps can't. One thing I would say, though, as I was gathering the information for this PowerPoint and all the things in it at sort of 2:00 last night, was that I felt that it was quite dominated by English speakers, is what I would say, but also those in Europe as well. So I think that when we talk about the best armies in the world, what I think that I don't have a big conception of is perhaps Horus Heresy armies from Southeast Asia, Horus Heresy armies from Japan, from countries that perhaps don't use hashtags like Horus Heresy. I think it's just difficult to be able to understand what the quality and level of hobby is like in the Horus Heresy. So I definitely think that this is a Western / Antipodean kind of focused best armies in the world. And if we are missing some that you might expect, then we do apologize. But of course, we couldn't include everybody in the list. And exactly as John said right at the start, these armies have also been chosen because, and a nice way that Adam put it before we went on air, because it was a real a needle army. Kind of it changed the direction of Horus Heresy. And as you see, as we go through kind of the development of the Heresy painting style, I think there are a few individuals responsible for that in particular. So let's start off and embark on the journey, because we're gonna.
It's worth saying as well. Like,
Yeah.
we are going to have some honourable mentions at the end, either for people who have done like some stuff but maybe haven't got like a full kind of painted army on the table, or maybe sort of dropped off the edge of the world when it comes to Heresy. And I'm sure we're going to get a huge amount of bullying in the comments about people that we haven't included. So if there is anyone that you feel like we have missed out on, I think this is something that we do want to revisit again at a later date. So it'd be nice if you just drop a comment with anyone that you feel like we've missed out on.
Yeah, and we're certainly not trying to be malicious in any way.
Oh, no.
Missing people out either. But also, if you want to name some people and you think we missed lots of people out, then create your own Horus Heresy podcast, and you can do your own shows as well. Adam, before we get started, do you want to say anything before we get started about kind of just Horus Heresy painting style, just more generally? Just some of your kind of initial thoughts on it.
I think when I think about the style, I think it's where the artistic meets the realistic.
Yeah.
And I think capturing that balance is the most important thing. Obviously, it's subjective and it's down to one's personal taste and skill level and all of these contributing factors. But what I personally like to see is that correlation between artistic and realistic within the setting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're going to talk about a whole range of different styles as well as we go through some examples. And I'm sure you've plucked them from like a range of different criteria as well. So I'm almost certain there'll be something unique and some type of unique style championed in each army.
Yeah.
That will sort of highlight.
Cool.
And I don't think that I want to just caveat everything by saying I don't think there is a perfect recipe for making a terrific army.
Yeah.
There just isn't. There's a load of contributing factors that go towards it, but there's no set rules, just like anything with art, I guess.
That's really interesting, actually. And perhaps as we go on, and perhaps at the very end, as we have this discussion, perhaps we can, in the final conclusion, perhaps we can talk about what we think those contributing factors are, and what are the pillars that make some of the best armies in the world. You know, is it painting? Is it conversions? Is it basing? Is it et cetera, et cetera. So let's just have that in our heads as we kind of draw towards the final conclusion, what those pillars are. But we are going to set you on basically a timeline. So if we go to the next slide, John, because there are some kind of critical moments, I think, in the development of the Horus Heresy. And for me, I think that
what's a book? What a fucking book! Oh man,
excuse me. It starts.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. No, you're absolutely right to say that. So this book is.
Are you okay, John? Are you okay?
Yeah, I even have this book. It's there. It's on the shelf. Like, but even then, sometimes I forget it exists, and then I remember, and it's just like, it just transports you back in time.
So, if you are unfamiliar with this book, Imperial Armor Model Class Volume 1 is a seminal piece of modeling kind of tutorials and information. It's absolutely brilliant. It is, I think, better than Volume 2. We'll talk about Volume 2 perhaps a little bit later. But Volume 1 is particularly special because it gives you step-by-step guides about how to create tanks in this kind of Forge World style that they had back in the noughties. Now,
I think it's from my perspective, it's the first time where you've seen Games Workshop kind of give credence to influences outside of their initial kind of sphere of control. So the first time, I think, where you really start to see like techniques brought in from like the scale modeling kind of world, and kind of various other models, and also just the fact that there is an acknowledgement that there are other ways of doing things, other styles, other than that kind of very of the time, clean, crisp, heavy metal style that we become so accustomed to. There are things that exist, like Tamiya produce paints. Did you know?
Yeah,
you might want to use some of those.
That is very important as well, John.
Yeah.
Exactly as you say, because many of the tools suggested within this book are not GW products in a way that would be have been associated with because GW at this point was also creating step-by-step tutorial guides, books for people, but they were all done with GW products. What was special and very different about this book was that it suggested using materials that were not GW branded products. Things like even varnishes and things.
Or pledge floor
varnishes and things like that. So the other thing I would say that was quite striking about this book was the use of an airbrush as well. So within this, there wasn't huge amounts of color modulation. But there was some color modulation, and certainly it was to create. The airbrush was used an awful lot to create things like mottled effects on panels and planes like that. So it was used in a way, perhaps not necessarily to do color modulation. When we talk about that, we might talk about contrast on the side of a tank going from dark to light, just in its most simple form. But an airbrush was used to create different techniques, and those techniques included mottling, as I say, but also things like heat exhausts and things like that, where you could create kind of scorching effects on weapon barrels as well. So what was really unique about this book was it drew lots of elements about scale modeling together. And part of the reason why was because it was written by Mark Bedford and Phil Stukuskas, who was one, and Phil was known before his time at Forge World as a very famous scale modeler. In fact, he was the guy that created the hairspray chipping method. He was the one who kind of coined it, created it, and designed it, and then popularized it as well. And all that is, if you're unfamiliar with that, is basically you lay down hairspray, you apply your paint, and then you can scratch it away because you've use water.
Are you broken?
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
Are you having a stroke?
I am. Yeah. You've used water in order to reactivate the hairspray. So this was, I think, a really important moment in the development of a heresy style. But this came before the release of Horus Heresy in 2012. Is there anything you guys want to say before we talk about 2012? Because that is obviously going to be an important moment. But scale modeling, tanks, World War II style, bringing influences outside of GW into GW's studios. I think are all points that I would say about this particular book. Do you guys want to add anything to that?
I think going back to what I said before, the artistic versus the realistic. This is the inception of the realism into Games Workshop and Forge World kits, and for the time it was just completely out of this world. I remember when the book was released, and I think I opened my friend's copy, and I was just like, I was blown away by how stark it was in comparison to the paint jobs by Heavy Metal I was so accustomed to, and which is what I learned from. It felt so backwards. To kind of read about these things. But even now, looking at those old kits painted on the front cover, that style just breathed a whole new life into each model kit as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think. Sorry, John. Go for it. I'll say.
Yeah, what I was going to say was, I think that what it did was it started to. This was the time when it seemed as if Forge World was really starting to kind of have gravitas within the kind of GW sphere as its own sort of separate studio, and it was this book that kind of informed that kind of design language, from a kit perspective, but also from an artistic style perspective. And I think that this is, as you said, this is the inception. This is Genesis for everything that we do today.
Yeah. If you had the kit, though, what this book makes clear is that all of these techniques are actually very achievable. I think that's the other one. These were not complex, finessed, multiple edge highlighting. In fact, edge highlighting was not a thing. Lots of these things were done with sponges, with airbrushes, with glosses. With inks, with oils,
pencils.
Yeah, exactly. And if you just followed the procedure, you could create something that looks absolutely amazing. And I think that this is another thing about this book, which is that you had great looking effects, great looking models that were relatively simple if you follow the procedure to do, and if you have the kit as well. So yeah, anyway, let's have a look at the next one, because I do want to talk about Golden Demon as we go through this as well. So I've not obviously taken every single Golden Demon, and lots of these photos have come from various places. Golden Demon Compendium has really helped me out with this, so thank you to those guys who have a collection of all the Golden Demon entries. But this is 2008, so the same year that the Model Masterclass book was released. These also won demon. So you can see the Dreadnought there, and you can see the Vanquisher there as well. Now the Vanquisher does have some freehand on it, but it's certainly more towards the military modeling kind of side.
Yeah.
And you can perhaps start to tell the influences of the Forge World painting team. You know, is a Forge World tank, for example, within this Vanquisher. But certainly the Dreadnought fits with very much what we might think of as an heavy metal style, a Games Workshop style during this period. Anybody want to make any comments on Adam? You would probably know better than me about Golden Demons and things like that and development of painting.
I think you're right with what you're saying. Is this the first example that you could find of these sort of techniques creeping into competition painting?
These were just 2008. I just wanted ones that would correspond to the year that the Forge World book came. So there were ones previously, but I just wanted to kind of show what was being done around this time and the two almost different styles that we were starting to see within Golden Demons at this period.
Yeah, well, the styles are polarizing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think as they get more and more refined as the years go on, I think they polarize even more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the technical painting gets even more technical, and the realistic style continues to break new ground as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we go to the next slide, John, 2012. So important year. So 4 years between the release of Forge World Masterclass Book 1 and in 2012, the Horus Heresy is launched by Forge World, and specifically Forge World. Games Workshop, I don't think had their mitts on it. It was done specifically by Forge World and had built on the work of the Imperial Armor and the Badab War and things like that. Had built on that, and we kind of got to this point, this 2012, and it was also off the back of the novels as well. And Alan Bligh had written Betrayal, and it was book 1, big black book, really amazing moment. And within this White Dwarf, there was a 8-page spread of the different models that were being released. But again, those models had a very distinctive style, which was they linked back to that Forge World Model Masterclass book, but also they were quite flat. You know, there was no edge highlighting, there was sponge chipping, and it was almost a battered, weathered, and grubby style of painting. Is what I say, but it's a really kind of important moment, and also this is Heresy in its infancy. But I think that team of Mark Bedford, of Phil, and a little bit later when Matt joins as well, these guys are developing that Heresy style. But I think the most important thing is that it's very, very distinct from what we had come to see and expect from the Games Workshop heavy metal team from there. Anything anybody wants to say, perhaps reminisce about Betrayal in 2012?
I think there was just a conscious decision to make that style the Forge World style. So after 2008 releasing that book, just thinking back off the top of my head, everything released after that was in that ilk.
Yeah.
And painted and displayed to that style.
Yeah, I do.
So I think that was just the Forge World choice moving forward with anything that they were releasing.
Yeah, 100%. So if we go to the next slide, because I just want to reference Golden Demon, but we will come back to the Heresy models in a moment. So in 2012, these were some of the winners of Golden Demons. So again, we had clearly models that were being influenced by that Forge World model masterclass book. And you can see that to some extent, those techniques, as Adam described, are actually getting more refined. I think that this is a 4 years.
Neither of those would look out of place today.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about the Dreadnought in a bit because that's by our friend Prometheus, who we know. But the tank, I think that even within those 4 years, the scale modelling within Games Workshop painting had really come on quite a long way.
Yeah.
In terms of its realism, but also with that Contempt of Dreadnought, we have it's obviously painted yellow. There's some elements of edge highlighting. It's a Forge World model, and is obviously of the Imperial Fist. Now, I don't know if when he did this, it was meant to be for Horus Heresy, or whether it was just a generic sort of Contempt of Dreadnought. But I think that this is also a great piece to start to explain where the infancy of Horus Heresy painting, where you've got battle damage, you've got oils being used, you've got scratches, we've got streaks, etc., and then we've got bases that show that Age of Darkness war-torn landscape. So you can start to see that a distinctive style is being created, and also those styles are winning Golden Demons as well. I think that's the other thing I would say. So it's not, Golden Demon isn't being dominated by sort of heavy metal painting, but there is a style starting to seep through. If we go to the next one, though, to the next slide, you can see some of the earliest paint schemes done by the Forge World painting team. Now, some of these will have been done by airbrushing, of course. Certainly the World Eaters Dreadnought, the white and the blue the white has been airbrushed. But I think the blue was actually done with a sponge. And Forge World at this very, very early stage also started producing guides for people. And they were just online PDFs of the original Isfan Legions. And they gave you very, very simple, straightforward recipes about how to do with metallics, how to do the armors, etc. That was all very, very straightforward and also really accessible, but looked fantastic as well. So I suppose at this point, 2012, you've already got a very definitive style that's been created and generated by the Forge World Studio that was again introduced by the work 4 years earlier as well. Do you guys want to add to that before we have a look at the next slide?
No, I think you're pretty spot on.
Yeah,
John.
I think I can't really think to add other than the fact that my first Emperor's Children army was painted using that exact same.
There you go.
That exact same guide. I think it's just fascinating to kind of look back and just look at the kind of different sort of attitude towards it as well. Do you know what I mean? Like this, like you wouldn't see this now. And also again, like the way that the company's developed, like you would soon see not long after this, like a whole specific range of Forge World paints. You'd have the first lot of paints that were designed for airbrushing, that were Forge World paints. You'd have all of the weathering powders and the other kind of products that would be sold under the Forge World banner. And I think it's just absolutely, it kind of speaks to just a different time, really.
Absolutely. So if we go to the next slide, and I think this is interesting that but here we do have a dichotomy start to set in. And I think that this is a really good example of where Adam talks about that stylistic, artistic element combined with the realistic element. So these are Ferrus Manus and Conrad Kurz, and they're both painted by Matt Kane. Now, Matt Kane has a really interesting interview with a guy called The Race for Terror. So he's done actually 3 parts about the development of Forge World painting style. And I used a lot of what we are looking at today. I found a lot of the information within there, as well as delving into White Dwarf articles. So if you want a more detailed overview of this subject, then definitely head over to Race for Terror. But Matt does a really interesting interview as the 3rd part of the YouTube series that the Race for Terror does. So I'd recommend going to have a listen. But I think what's important about these pieces, so you have a very distinctive style in terms of the line infantry, the tanks, the Contempt of Dreadnoughts. But within that, you also have these Primarchs being taken to another painting level. You've got real artistic flair from Matt and real skill and accomplishment in painting being combined with, say, bases that are quite realistic. You know, you've got battle damage on the bases, on the Marines, the dead Marines around the bottom. You've got blood splatters here and there. And I think that the Primarchs in particular are a great example of where Adam talks about that merging of realism and that merging of artistic, that artistic look. And I think that the Primarchs are a great explanation for where painting will go in its journey over the next, say, 5 years. And we'll talk about, you know, what happens next in a bit. But I just think that the elevation of the Primarchs is on another level. The painting's on another level. And I know that Matt spent an awful long time painting these absolutely amazing Primarchs, from what we would expect from the line infantry. And I think that to some extent that's also seeped into just painting just more in general, which is the line infantry. They're the basic bitches, you know, they do their thing. You don't need to spend as much time painting them. And then on your character models, that's where you spend like loads of your time painting it. And that is a philosophy that I think lots of people still use, even now when they talk about Horus Heresy painting, but just painting just in general as well. Do you guys want to add anything about the Primarchs and painting?
I think that the heavy metal style paints in a way that obviously shows off the model, like the model's greatest potential, shows off all the details in the model. I think that because the Primarchs are so detailed, you do need to combine really technical elements in their painting in order to show them off as best you can. Because if you were to apply, you know, just military modeling techniques to a model like this with so much detail, a lot of the detail will just be lost or will just sort of come across as a bit of a mess. So I do think the technical painting is also a necessity in order for Forge World to show off this premium product to the best of their abilities. But what he's done is he's just found the right balance of that technicality mixed with or merged with the realism, and it looks awesome. As you said, it sets the stage, right, for years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing I would say about these is that they've also stood the test of time, because much of, if you go to the Legiones, the Liber books now, many things have been repainted from those earliest periods. So Contemptors have been completely repainted. Character models, even those earliest models, have been repainted. But the character series and the Primarchs, those are the original paint jobs. And that just goes to show that they've been able to stand the test of time over 10 years. In fact, this is, you know, we are talking 2012, right? 2013. So 10 years, even then, these still are, you know, really hold their own, even when painting's moved on. However, if we go to the next slide, and I think that this is probably the most important year. My thesis is that 2015 is the most important year for the development for Horus Heresy painting. Now, many in the comments might disagree with me, but personally, I think this is.
But you don't care, Rob.
No, I don't, not really, because my thesis is that 2015 is really important.
Okay.
So, Matt,
tell us why.
Matt leaves the studio.
Yeah,
it might be in 2014 he left the studio, but essentially he leaves the studio, and in 2015 he creates, I guess, a business, which he commercializes and packages painting into a painting masterclass series under the banner of MKA Studio, so Matt Kane Studios. And he's supported by Andy Wardle. So they work together, and they will, in 2015, host events in the UK, but also worldwide as well, including, I think, Adam, you went to these courses as well when they came to Australia. They host a series of courses teaching students, up to 300 students all together, about their style of painting and about Matt's style of painting, the painting that he's developed over his period while he is working at the Forge World studio. And what he does there is that he combines these stylistic elements, these artistic elements, with that original Forge World weathering that we see all the way back from 2008. and he packages it into a weekend painting a rhino, but also classes painting infantry as well. And I think that 2015 is important. So if we have a look at the next slide, because within 2015, we have, I think, a step change in Golden Demon and the way in which models are painted. So I think that with the MKA courses, they also, to some extent, demystify the use of an airbrush, but also popularize the use of an airbrush. You know, people are seeing people come out of these courses with amazing looking tanks, and then perhaps they haven't been on these courses, but they see how the style is developing and then try to emulate that style as well. And then that kind of spreads like a ripple. And I think that the MKA courses is the other point, I think, that where the heresy style is really, really defined around this mishmash of artistic combined with realism as well. So in 2015, you can see here some of the winners of this. Now, this was a specific tank painting Golden Demon in 2015. But Richard Gray wins the Slayer sword with his Fellblade. Andy takes 2 Golden Demons with his Fellblade and then with his Sicarans. And then the Death Guard tanks there take a Golden Demon for a tank squadron. And I think that this person went on the MKA courses. So you can really see the influence of those courses and that paint style that Matt and Andy have kind of defined and developed. And you can see that now winning competitions. And it's just like a fashion show, right? Which is that if you have a fashion collection the year before, that inevitably seeps into clothes on the high street later on. Absolutely. And I think that the Golden Demon is a great example of seeing how these things kind of have a ripple effect within the wider hobby and community. But this, as I say, was 2015 when this happened. And is it just me? Am I making links where they aren't there, or can you see the link? You know, those links between those two.
You definitely can, and especially as well because of the kind of, I think, the promotion of the heresy as well. Like, you start to see, like, 2015 is when you start to see a lot of the kind of the sort of fondly remembered, or in some cases still going, kind of podcasts and stuff going.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of there's a lot of sort of, you know, what is book 3 out at this point? Is it book 4?
Possibly. But we'll talk about what comes next in the slide, but yeah.
But like, there is an awful, like, the heresy train is kind of like, there are loads more kits available. And I think it's like, it's kind of, this is the first golden age, really. I think we're probably kind of in the second golden age now, but this is the first true golden age of heresy. Yeah. And I think just like there is much more sort of popularization around the game, and as well, like we only got to notice like the quality of kind of heresy in general. Like, it only takes 2 or 3 people to kind of start going to events and elevating their game, but everyone else be like, "Oh my god, fucking hell, how'd you do that?"
Exactly.
And then it kind of encourages this kind of overall upskilling in terms of the kind of general populace, really. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. Adam, is there what do you think? Do you think there's a link? Because for me, 2015 is an integral year into the development of the heresy painting style. But what, from your perspective, do you see those links, or what's your thoughts on that?
I think the first thing that jumps out at me is the vibrancy of color.
Yes. Yeah.
And we're starting to see the Games Workshop color schemes and vibrancy creeping into something that was quite dull and drab.
Yeah.
So a bright yellow tank with, you know, chipping and weathering and all these sorts of techniques, it still pops and looks amazing.
Yeah. Yeah,
so I think that's the start of the progression.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I just wanted to use the Golden Demon almost as a benchmark to see what was happening at these. They're great markers to see how painting develops, I think, and it's interesting just combining all these timings together. Anyway, if we have a look at the next slide, John. So in 2015, we also have another change, I think, which is that the Betrayal of Chaos box is released, and then in 2016 the Horus Heresy Medal Masterclass book is released, and then the Burning of Prospero box is released. Now, what I think is interesting around these releases is that this is also the first time where the the Games Workshop painting style, that heavy metal style that we associate so closely with it, is basically the box art for these Games Workshop boxes. And that is different to what we've seen before, where basically Forge World were doing the paint jobs for these things. And so you have 2015, not only have you got the year of the MKA, where you're demystifying airbrushes, you've got a package being sold to people that is able, and not in a bad way. I think it's just a package of painting that people can digest and do, and it's procedural, and you're able to get great results. But also within that, as Adam says, you've got the vibrancy of the color, but also you've now got Games Workshop starting to paint Horus Heresy models as well, which I think is probably worth a bit of a discussion. But this is where I think Games Workshop is starting to get more and more obviously more involved within the Heresy, because they're going to plastic kits. But as a knock-on effect, they're also getting more involved with the artistic element of the Horus Heresy, just because they're doing the box art for it.
Yeah,
even looking at
yes, right.
even sorry, John, continue.
No, you go. Your point will definitely be better than mine.
Oh no, just something that I noticed was the even the vibrancy of the miniatures on the model masterclass book is completely different to the last one.
Yeah, you've got a bright metallic red knight, haven't you? But what's interesting about the model masterclass book is that it harps back to obviously the volume 1 book that we've seen, but you really get a sense that those the combination of those bright colors combined with the airbrushing, combined with weathering techniques, it's a melange combined within this particular book within 2016 as well. But obviously that's going to be produced. I think that was, I know it was produced when Matt was there, because lots of Matt's miniatures are within it, and I think he does a fair amount within it as well. But I think Phil, and I'm sure Mark Bedford also probably had a hand in it. But if Mark Bedford's watching,
I think it's interesting also as well that it's branded as the Horus Heresy Model Masterclass. Whereas, and I think this is kind of shows the kind of dissemination between the kind of main design studio spaces and the kind of specialist game studios or Forge World. It kind of shows that like Forge World and the Heresy are sort of so intertwined now.
Yeah.
Whereas, you can kind of see and even you've seen from the release of kits, like, there hasn't been a lot of non-Heresy related releases from Forge World for years and years and years, and especially by this point they're really starting to slow down. I think that's the Heresy style and the Forge World style are kind of becoming one and the same.
Yeah. I think that's good assessment. If we just go to the next slide. So this is just some
all of this is so good. This feels like if all of this stuff could have been done today and it would still feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. So this, I think, was done around
Giuseppe, right?
Yeah, this is all Giuseppe. So if you don't follow Axia Miniature Painting, I think it is, then he's definitely worth a follow, because he's an absolutely amazing painter. But Giuseppe painted all of these, and this was all done around, I think, the 2016 period, 2017 period. And I think he leaves the Forge World studio in 2018. I think that's right, from reading his stuff yesterday when I was reading his blog. But again, the links, they're all linked together. You can see now a very distinctive style within the Forge World studio that has been created since 2012. Where you've got bright colors, you've got color modulation. We haven't talked about that yet, and the changes in color modulation, and that goes right back to those 2015 Golden Demon picks, the courses, etc. But you've got color modulation on the Arcus and on the Landspeeder, and then you've got these bigger, massive scale models coming out where lots of those techniques are also being employed as well. Cool. Right, let's just go to the next one. So in 2018, Cult of Paint is formed. So MKA is no more, basically. I think they break up before 2018. But essentially, that style of painting is then transformed into Cult of Paint. And so they continue the journey And they do other stuff, of course. You know, if you speak to them, they do like painting flesh and things like that, and they can kind of make those classes broader than perhaps the MKA ones were. But what is integral is that that package that was created in those preceding years is still being maintained by the Cult of Paint Boys. And then as you know, COVID hits, obviously that turns into YouTube videos and then Patreon, etc., etc. But they are still packaging these courses, and then that information is being disseminated to people, and then people see that online. And we haven't talked about the influence of social media and Instagram and things like that, Facebook. But these are places that people are looking, going, wow, you know, I want to emulate that. How do I do it? Do I go on these courses? Do I just try and copy it from home, etc.? But this package of kind of heresy painting style, I would argue, continues in the form now of Cult of Paint. And then, but also within that, if you go to the next slide, within 2018 and 2019, I think that we also have a distinctive change in the painting style of the Primarchs at this point, where before Matt had done those very early ones where he'd combined scale modeling techniques with artistic flair. What you've got now is that the Primarchs are now being painted with, for example, non-metallic metal, which we hadn't seen in those very, very early periods. And technically, this is like, I mean, Adam will be able to tell us more, but this really is as good as it gets, right, Adam? I mean, this is a very, very technically difficult thing to do, to create Rogal Dawns and Sanguiniuses that look like this. But
it's terrific, but it's such a departure from what they had come from, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I don't know if that's just got to do with the changing of the guard in regards to staff studio and what their sort of preferred style was. Maybe they had to sort of vouch for their own art direction.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's something that Forge World consciously decided to pursue. We probably will never be privy to those decisions.
Yeah.
But, well, the best we could do is guess. But again, it just shows the level of detail in the Primarch sculpts, right?
Yeah, but I think that I agree with you 100%. So in 2018, obviously Rogal Dawn drops. That was very different from any Primarch we had probably seen before. Maybe Lehman Russ being an exception. I think he was done with non-metallic metal as well. But in 2019, we have Sanguinius, which looks amazing, of course, but as you say, it's a real departure from everything we've seen. But then but I will come back to these ones, because I think one was done by Pedro, one was done by I want to say Borna, perhaps, is the artist on those, but we'll come back to those guys later. But if we go to the next slide, in 2018 we have Golden Demon, and this is a much wider array. And I think there were two Golden Demons. There was a heresy specific one, and then a more general one. And these are pictures that I think really show off the development. And some of these aren't even Horus Heresy tanks or models, but they really show off a very distinctive style now that has been created over the preceding couple of years of airbrushing, color modulation, battle damage, weathering, etc., etc. And I think that you can really start to see the heresy style starting to infuse within the wider Games Workshop kind of style as well. I would argue on some of these. Richard, I think it's France's Vindicator's 40k Vindicator there has a lot of those styles and a lot of those weathering and streaking and things like that. And then you've got that amazing color modulation in the Redemptor Dreadnought in a way that perhaps we probably wouldn't have seen a few years earlier, because I think that this was all done by airbrushing as well. So yeah, it's interesting to note in 2018 how the style has developed from when we saw in 2008, 10 years on, really relatively not that long a time, how it has developed. Anybody want to add anything to that?
I think also as well, you're starting to see this real sort of like dichotomy of styles as well. I think like there has been like a clearly, up to this point, I think there has been like a clearly defined style. And that's typically because a lot of people are following the same people in terms of there are a small number of like trendsetters who are kind of spreading the word about how
highly influential people. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Highly influential people on social media who are showing off their work, and then that is infusing, I think,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas I think where the point now is, we're at the point where, you know, you've also got a scenario where I think typically the people that were painting Heresy prior to this were Heresy gamers.
Yeah.
Whereas now I think we've got people who are miniature painters who are painting Heresy models, and therefore their natural styles are being kind of like suffused into their works. And I think that's then influencing other people to do other things, who are then influencing other people. And I think this becomes so much more evident when we kind of come to look at some of the armies. We see this is the point where people's individual styles are born, and you're now at this point, I think, almost getting to the point where we're able to say, oh, that's a so-and-so model, that's a so-and-so model, that's a so-and-so model.
Yeah. It's super interesting. What's your thoughts on it, Adam?
I think also that 2015 to 2018 period was a big leap forward in how we share hobby on social media as well.
Yeah, agreed.
And so that played a really big part in the influence of this style having so much reach.
Yeah.
I think 2015 there was a lot of Facebook and that sort of sharing going on. And then by 2018, Instagram had really picked up by that point and taken off, and became such a source of, unlimited inspiration, nearly.
Almost oversaturation
of a whole bunch of stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that reach has a big part to play in the uptake of this particular style, and I think it almost became a mainstream sort of thing, and I think it kind of has established itself as a mainstream look to Heresy.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But what is interesting, if we go to the next slide, is that we in 2020 I think the Games Workshop, although I think it's the specialist design team, but I think that what then happens is, and it's very odd, because you've then got these almost non-metallic metal Primarchs in 2018, 2019, and to some extent with Lehman Russ as well. But then in 2020, we go back to a much more conventional style of painting. And I think Drew painted these, and they are amazing. I'm not sure who painted the card, but definitely painted the line. But we are going back to a much more kind of I would describe as a Games Workshop style of painting. So again, a conscious decision has been made to move away from what we've previously seen in the previous 2 years with the Primarchs, and then moving towards in 2020, 2021, 2022, towards a much more Games Workshop style painting. But I guess with some influences of battle damage and things like that within previously taken from the Horus Heresy. And then if we just go to the next slide,
I think it was just to credit, I think it was Harley Joseph Brown that was doing the studio stuff by the time that the card came out. I was just checking back on his Instagram, but I think that was his first. I think I want to say that was his first Primarch that he painted. So, but you can again see like a kind of a and he's painted all of these since as well. So
so if we just go to my screen has gone black, so I'm using my phone to look.
Oh, that's fine. We're on the slide with Horus Ascended and the latest release.
But so all of these things from 2020 onwards are of a distinctive style, aren't they? I mean, however we get around it, yes, they're bright, but they're much more in line with what we understand as top level heavy metal, with less so with probably airbrushing, but quite a lot of soft shading. So the contrast is not as much as we might expect to say we have with an airbrush, and perhaps what we've seen previously in the previous years with color modulation. We have and certainly with the Emperor's Children model there, we've got the finest of technical painting, but certainly the contrast that we've seen the preceding years is now gone. There will be contrast because there'll be soft shading within those armor tones. But not in a way that perhaps we'd previously seen. And if we just go to the final slide on this section, it's the 2023 Golden Demon. So we had Craig pick up win with his Predator, and then we had Steve Garcia win a Golden Demon with his Ultramarines Leviathan. And I think that even here, and I suppose my final point would be, there would not be a Craig Pickup or a Steve Garcia with these models had we not had the preceding 10 years of the development in the Heresy painting style. I think is one of the points I would like to kind of just end on, which is that you can see an evolution within the wider, the Horus Heresy painting community, but also where it was incepted at Forge World. But it's interesting how now the Games Workshop team, now that they've taken over Horus Heresy or the specialist painting team or whatever, how that is now a distinctive style in and of itself. And I just wonder what the next 10 years will be. And I think it's an interesting, question mark to hang above this discussion. What will the next 10 years be? And will what we're seeing now with the Horus Ascended, with the Malagast, will that define the next 10 years of Horus Heresy painting?
I think with the miniatures you showed in the last slide, if I was to guess, I would say that there would have been a conscious decision from Specialist Games and from Games Workshop or Heavy Metal to bring their styles closer together.
Yeah,
I agree.
So you can see the development in the Heavy Metal style as well, even though we don't have any examples here.
Yeah,
they've started to introduce a lot more modulated shading, a lot more subtle weathering, a lot more dusting of the boots and little chips and little hints of realism slowly creep in. And I think what Max and those super influential guys on Heavy Metal are kind of bringing into it, the gap's closing again. Whereas I think if we look back to the Rogal Dawn and the Sanguinius, they're exceptionally painted, but they're super flamboyant.
Yeah,
in their style. And I just think now that there's been a decision made to kind of unionize the two looks.
The two looks, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because actually, the guys, I think Pedro and I want to say Borna, but maybe that's not right. But those guys who painted the Rogal Dawns and the Sanguiniuses, these guys painted the Horuses and the Malagas and the Assassins later on. So they're the same artists, but just their styles are changing. And obviously, as you say, there's been a conscious choice from there. But yeah, so
that's just my guess.
Yeah, well, I
don't know for sure.
I suspect you're probably right, but it's interesting going right back to 2000. Was it 2008 when the Forge World Masterclass book was
2008, 15 years.
Yeah, so how the style has changed, but also not within just the microcosm of Horus Heresy, but also I think that had a wider impact on just painting just more in general. And I think you can probably see that through Golden Demons and things like that. So before we go on to best painted armies in the world, there's what people are here to see. We'll just take another quick break and then join us after the break to see those armies. So welcome back, and this is the moment that we know you've all been waiting for, where we have a look at what we think are some of the best armies in the world. Now, we won't
some of the best painted. What we think are some of the best painted armies in the world.
Yes. Now, what we won't do is linger too long in each one, but we will spend a little bit longer on those which we think are probably historic and important and seminal in their painting style and what they did for the wider heresy community. I think that's the best way to do it. So we won't linger too long in each one. We'll whiz through these, but perhaps spend a little bit longer on some than others. And as we go through, it would be good for you guys listening at home, but also for John, Adam, and myself to think about what makes a well-painted army a good army. What do we think is a standout army? What are the pillars that the unwritten pillars, I suppose, about what is a well-painted force. So the first one that we have is at Daily Heretic with some absolutely outstanding Dark Angels. Now,
I fucking love this army so much. I don't know why we started with this one because I think it can only go downhill.
So I think Dark Angels are a tough army to get right. There's always so much going on with them. Yeah, the white, the silver, the black, the red, and then to balance all those in a coherent color scheme that works effectively and not look too busy, I think is a real challenge. But I think that Daily Heretic has done that with some absolutely outstanding Dark Angels. What are your lads' thoughts on this?
Well, he's not fallen into the trap of making the black not black.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that's the biggest thing because it gives you then that kind of that sort of center point from which you can work from everywhere else.
Yeah. Good point. Excellent point. Right.
And I've been guilty of that myself, right? Making my black look too blue or too grey or too green. And then it throws off your whites and your contrasting colours a little bit. And you've always got that sort of.
Absolutely fantastic. And then the other thing I would say is that Daily Heretic has a YouTube tutorial about how he created his Dark Angels. So for free, no paywalls, you can emulate this style of paint.
I think I think I might be using the word tasteful a lot with some of these armies coming up. And I do think sometimes Dark Angel armies can fall into the trap of maybe being overwhelmed with detail, or maybe falling into the trap of, oh, I need to add certain details here and there or add more color. But I think he's restricted the palette in a way that has given more impact to the overall scheme and army.
Yeah.
And I think he's been really selective with his spot colors and his placement of his detail colors. Yeah. And I just think it's really tastefully done, as well as being really technical as well.
I mean, that's what I wanted to say.
I really love this army
to be able to say that. So yeah, perfect. Yeah, maybe we should start with Adam, and then
yeah.
Right. Let's have a look at the next one. So at Secret 30K Geek, he is a Golden Demon winning artist. So Sire's been out of the hobby for a little while, but he was back with vengeance at our most recent event and brought some amazing Dark Angels with him. His painting is really inspirational. He's got a really distinctive style with his Dark Angels, but his attention to detail is just absolutely superb. What do you lads think of Sire's painting?
Why doesn't Adam go first?
Yeah, Adam, you go first.
Okay. And just get a closer look. Yeah, they're really technical as well, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's almost like the what do you call it? Like the apex, or like the apotheosis of that sort of MKA style. You can see that the foundations are there. Whether he's been on the course or not is irrelevant. I can't really speak to whether he has or not, but it doesn't really matter because it's just the foundations of the core aesthetic are there and just executed just really, really well.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And then the final thing I'd say before coming to you, John, is that the guy with the yellow shoulder pad and the checks on him is he's copied that from the artwork of the Space Marine novel. If you've ever seen that before, that is a direct copy. He's tried to copy that, which is looks absolutely fantastic. John, what's your thoughts on Sire's work?
Yeah, I think as well, like exactly what you touched on. The attention to detail is like truly excellent.
Yeah,
I think from like 3 feet away they look great, and then every foot or kind of 6 inches you get closer, there's just more and more and more stuff that you notice, and I think that's the thing that really kind of sets them apart. I think they are absolutely wonderful, and as we know, like, you know, Sire's been doing this for like a long time, and the fact that he's been able to sort of take such a big break and come back with such a big flourish is a testament to his skill as an artist.
I think that's a really fair thing to say. So make sure you go follow Secret 30K Geek. Next up, we have our friend Kieran.
Fucking chump.
At Raptor Imperialis, and a good friend of Adam's, part of the Melbourne heresy scene. Now, am I right in saying Adam, that Kieran was one of those first kind of influential bolter and chainsaw armies. He was posting very early
if we're talking about this, Rob, I need to interrupt you and say,
sorry,
Kieran's Emperor's Children army featuring the bottom right picture, the initial one, that's got me into the game.
That got you into he was the man. He's the man.
So I will the origin story was that I'd been out of the game for ages, and I got kind of back into it by someone gave me a Kindle for Christmas, and I had a free book, and one of the free books you could choose from was Horus Rising.
Right.
So I was like, bosh, downloaded it, read it, and then immediately I was like, started churning through them, and then I remember searching. I was like, I'm just gonna have a quick little Google away quietly to myself in a corner, and this army popped up on Bolter and Chainsword, and I was like, holy fucking shit, I need this in my life.
Yeah.
And there we go. That
was
it.
Something quite special. Now he's gone through several iterations of this force. So if you follow him, and I'm sure you probably do, because he has thousands upon thousands of followers. There's lots of iterations, but I think that we can probably, although he might not, we can comfortably say this is a coherent looking force. I mean, some are based on Zone Mortalis bases, etc. But he's done some amazing green stuff work. He's a great converter. He's somebody who's got real attention to detail. You look at his metallics and you're just like, wow, really, they are something special. But his most recent kind of iteration of force is all based on upscale Tortuga models. So they certainly have a real big presence, I'm sure, on the tabletop. But what's your thoughts on this force, Adam, and perhaps the development of Kieran's painting style over time and his Emperor's Children over time as well?
Yeah, I mean, with practice and persistence, you just get better, right?
Yeah.
And that goes for everybody. I think that Kieran's super dedicated to the Emperor's Children. Like I don't know anyone that knows the Emperor's Children inside out like Kieran does. And he's really dedicated to bringing that to life through his models, and I think that's what makes especially the new iteration of his army so special. And he took I know he took a lot of time and consideration and experimentation in order to get the purple right. And when I say right, I don't mean the right kind of purple. I mean the right kind of purple to match his vision in his head. I think he's nailed it. He's just getting better and better as a painter. But on the table and all together, it's a beautiful purple to look at. It's a really menacing force, and I think that all his love and appreciation for the Legion that he's decided to collect is now being, translated through his models at a really, really high level.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you want
really good.
If you want to hear more about Kieran and his Emperor's Children, we did an entire episode with him. So he will tell you in his own words all about why he loves it and what he's been up to.
But as you say, John, I think a really important person and army in terms of that very early heresy scene, making conversions out of things that, using Games Workshop bits or third-party bits and making heresy models that didn't exist out of green stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that, very important, influential person for that very early stuff heresy. And he's not even that old, I don't think. I think, he's not an old chap, is he? He's clearly doing it when he was very young.
Oh, he's old enough to do hammies at soccer, so.
Fair enough.
It just means more time strapped to the painting.
That's it. Of course.
What's important is to recognize it's the desire to do more to the models out of the box.
Yeah.
Even in the early days, it was just about making each one more like the Legion, more special, more unique.
Yeah.
And the dedication to do that really sets the work apart.
Yeah, that's really I think that's a great way to end that. That's great. Right, let's have a look at the next one. So Black Ark Miniatures. Now, to say, I think it's fair, John, I hope John will agree with it. To say that the pictures do not do this army justice is an understatement. This is the attention to detail on this force is just amazing. And I think it's one of these examples of where it is a Games Workshop style of painting, but it translates really well to, I think, the White Scars, which are, the White Scars can be messy because there's so much going on. And because of Phil's precision when approaching the White Scars, they just look amazing. I mean, you know, the attention to detail when it comes to his little screens on his jet bikes and things like that is just absolutely amazing. And you just find detail after detail after detail, and you can only appreciate this army if you are standing next to it, looking closely at it, because when I saw it, it blew me away, and the pictures just do not do this justice. I wish people would start buying a DSLR and you know, some proper photography gear, because it's just, they are absolutely stunning. Stunning force. John, what you've seen this force in the flesh, haven't you?
So I could not agree more about how important it is that, so for a bit of background, Phil doesn't use an airbrush for any of this. It's all backwards painted, so it's just rattle canned, and then he'll shade down, highlight up where he needs to. But essentially, what he's doing is he's just a master of his art, and his art is detail. So every little, no stone's been left like unturned in the quest for adding as much detail to these miniatures as possible. Like I've not seen anyone who's so obsessive about decal placement and then going back in and weathering those decals as much as kind of he is. And there's just layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of detail. Him, and there's another army we're going to kind of come to in a short while, where I just think that they are, you could look at this, you could have a miniature in your hand, and you could look at it 4 times, and every time there would be something else you notice you hadn't seen the first time round. And I think that's, and the ability to be able to apply that consistently over what is now a pretty sizable collection of stuff, I think should really be commended. Again, I think like this is an army that's best viewed from 6 inches away as opposed to 6 feet away, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Adam, I know you've not seen this army in the flesh, but from what you perhaps have seen online and on the photos he sent to you previously, what's just your initial impressions of the force?
I think it's probably the most traditional style.
Yes.
Traditional heavy metals sort of, or traditional Games Workshop as we know it style on this list. And it's still exceptional, meaning that you know, you don't always need to have airbrushed contrast and oil streaks and you know, complicated weathering techniques and whatever to make a amazing looking army.
That's a really interesting thing to say, actually. Yeah, that's a really fair thing to say. Yeah,
So I think what this does, it bucks the trend quite a bit, and and just goes to show that there's no hard and fast rule of, or a hard and fast prerequisite list of what makes a heresy army terrific.
Yeah.
The technicality in itself is terrific. So yeah, I think he's done an awesome job.
Well, let's have a look at another White Scars army, because this is totally different, the other end of the spectrum. Now, it's just a personal thing, and I know I'm going to get abuse in the comments for this, but basically, I think that Grimdark often is used as a lazy way to do painting, which is just do a basic paint job, smother it in streak and grime,
Yeah, exactly, yeah,
and then take a photo from a million miles away, and the room is only lit by a candle, and then that's described as Grimdark. And I think that it can be quite lazy. And I think that Josh has actually put the definition of Grimdark into practice with skill, and has created a force like none other that I've ever seen in the flesh before. And it's unique, it's different, it's harmonized, it's ghoulish and ghastly in some ways because of the greens within the white. You know, it's almost like a frightening version of an ethereal version of the scars, rather than perhaps like an earthy version of the scars, which is what I often see. But yeah, it's like an ethereal version, and it's just he does that, smother it in oils or streak and grime, but then he does all the other bits that need to go along with it to make it look fantastic as well. And Josh should be so proud of this army, because whenever people see it, they just are absolutely floored by it. It's incredible. How about you, lads? From what you've seen of it.
So I've seen
For me,
again.
it's the
Seen this. Oh,
Jetbox.
sorry, Adam.
Nah, go, John. You can go first.
So I've seen this army in the flesh, and it is everything that Rob says. I think the thing that the real X factor about this army is the fact that there's an atmosphere around it. Is the fact that
important.
you can completely see the kind of there's a lot of kind of conversion work that's gone on, but like I said, it is that atmosphere that Josh has managed to kind of create with some of the ways that he's kind of like used those additional kind of colors, the way it's kind of lit. I think it's just absolutely fantastic. Like it's properly, like, I know it kind of sounds a bit cliched, but you can see on the table and you know the story that it's telling. I think that's something that I really consider sort of super important when kind of
to describe it. Yeah, atmosphere is a great way to describe it.
Yeah. Sorry, Adam.
Yeah, I think atmosphere is very important. And for me, the jet bike's my favorite.
Yeah.
I think what this army sort of says to me is that he's spent a lot of time conceptualizing the ideas. And I think that's more than half the challenge when it comes to creating an army that is unique, presentable, but also says enough about you as a painter. I know I'm getting a little bit kind of like fluffy or a bit like off the beaten path, or a bit conceptual myself, but that's how this kind of reads to me. I think he spent a lot of time thinking about what sort of aesthetic he wants, what sort of vibe, what sort of story he wants to tell with his miniatures. And he's created a dark, a brooding atmosphere that translates to this scheme the way he's done it. And the models, like I haven't really seen done on anything else. And it's awesome.
Yeah, great. Some great analysis of Josh's there. So make sure you go follow him at Water Beast. Let's have a look at the next one. So we've got the Legiones Astartes. Now this is an unusual one because this is one account shared by 3 or 4 people, but this is an army owned by Samit, who we know very, very well, who's a fantastic painter. He's got lots of armies. He's got Night Lords, he's got Blood Angels, and he's got Space Wolves. This is an award-winning army. You can see a Cult of Paint award given to his Leviathan there, but I think he won another award for his Warlord at the same event by Cult of Paint. But it's really great. And I think one of the things I would say about the Space Wolves, and there is a definite difference between, say, 40k Space Wolves to what we might think of Space Wolves or the Vilka Fenrika in 30k. I think that we think of them as more grey than perhaps that grey blue, it's a darker tone to the overall army, but has flashes and pops of either white or red within it. Samit has done an absolutely amazing job with this force, weathering the force, I think, in particular, but using lots of Tamiya greys to create that force. And he's done an absolutely incredible job with it. I think it's a really standout Vilka Fenrika force. What's your thoughts on it, Adam?
I love the grey on the Whirlwind. Yeah, it's really good. It's nice and moody as well.
Yeah.
But I think his collection is quite established and quite large now. He really knows what he's doing with the color scheme, and he can make really wise choices to elevate the model and the scheme.
Yeah.
And I do agree. It's probably some of the best, if not the best, Space Wolf collection that I've seen.
Yeah, it's fantastic. John, what's your brief thoughts?
Well, for starters, as much as it pains me to say so, it really is it's definitely the best Space Wolf army I've come across by an absolute country mile. And I really challenge anybody to show me an army that is objectively better. Better in inverted commas, but still. I think the thing that I love the most, and the thing that Smeet's absolutely brilliant at, and this is the same thing that I always talk about when I kind of compliment Andy Wardle on, is just like the ability to light the miniature really well.
Yeah.
Like that Contemptor in the middle, I've seen that model in the flesh. Like that isn't like just the lamp shining on it that's giving it that real subtle kind of contrast. That is lit that well in the flesh.
Yeah.
And that's something that I personally, is a technique that or a kind of a nuance that I personally find really good. Like I really like the way that he's able to do that. It's a great collection. It's a great force. He's an awful person, but I look forward to playing it again.
Excellent. Right, let's have a look at the next one. So at Ollie83 at Hammer. Now, if you go to
awful people, this is not an awful person.
No, this is a very good person. If you go to UK events, you'll know that Ollie wins lots and lots of awards for his armies. He's got a number of forces, and every single one is absolutely fantastic. So he's got World Eaters, he's got Pure Fist, he's got a Black Shields force, which just is amazing, and he's got a Cults and Militia force as well, which is just divine. So if you don't follow him, go and follow him.
He's got lots criminally underfollowed.
It's absolutely nuts. And also I abused him yesterday for saying that basically he's not got enough photos on his account, but he's got lots of reels, which is a nightmare to screenshot. So lots of videos, and it's the videos that really show off his army the best. So make sure you go follow him. He doesn't post very often, so maybe go and annoy him and say post more of your work, because it's just absolutely incredible. He had done an original Imperial Fist force, but I think this year he's gone back to it and he's done a lot more vehicles and things like that. Ollie uses weathering techniques combined with brushwork to really make some really striking forces, And I was speaking to him the other day about his Imperial Fist, and he was saying, "Yeah, I've used then magenta oils, and I've then put those into the shadows with a brush." And I was like, he's not done it with an airbrush. He's using oil modulation as opposed to airbrush modulation to get the effects on his tanks. And the sweeping army shots are the ones that really stand out. And I know when he went to Warhammer World event, he also won Best Painted Army there, and rightly so, because it's an absolutely stunning force, combining all those elements of everything that we discussed in the previous section. But Ollie uses oil modulation in a way that I don't think a lot of painters use oil modulation to create contrast on his panels, and it's really unique. Magenta in the shadows. I would have never have considered that to shade Imperial Fist with.
You can tell he's got a lot of experience.
Yeah.
And he's confident in making those choices to go for oil modulation or magentas. And he's got that experience and the confidence to just apply it, and it'll come out the end, and the end product will look like amazing. That's what his models kind of say to me. Is like, I've got the experience, I've got the nous, and having a lot of fun doing it too. And his paint jobs are terrific.
John,
I find he's the person that I kind of annoyingly find myself whenever I see Ollie. I'm like, how did you do that?
Yeah.
Like, how did you do that? Like, I just can't. I find myself quite often whenever I kind of look at stuff, or I'm trying to emulate a kind of a paint job. I feel like I'm pretty good at either having my own way of approaching something, or kind of being like, see, you've done that.
Yes.
A lot of time with Ollie, I just don't.
Yes, that's a good.
And obviously, he's a wonderful guy, super forthcoming in it. But I do feel like I'm probably like, it's probably like, oh, fuck, I'm not again.
Yeah, that's a very 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 interesting point. I asked Ollie a lot of questions when I saw this, because I was unclear about exactly how he went about doing. Let's have a look at the next one. So going over to Spain now.
Oh,
so
this guy,
Lawrenson Crusoe. Now Jose is a really lovely chap, but he's the most handsome man I think I've ever met. and it's difficult not to look into his eyes and fall in love with him immediately. But not only is he the most beautiful man I think I've ever seen, he's also an amazing painter, and his Iron Hands Force really demonstrates the quality of his painting. Now, I'll pass over to you guys, but one thing I would say with Jose's work is that he doesn't spend much time. He spends time, but he doesn't. His armor panels, he doesn't make it overly modulated. He's not into really high contrast on the actual armor. What he spends a lot of time on is often on the non-metallic metal element, and what he does is bring into his characters in particular non-metallic metal, which just is like nothing you've ever seen before. You know, his Iron Hands Force are super special, really unique, and the non-metallic metal I've seen it in the flesh. It's so striking, it stands out, and it's just absolutely divine and absolutely incredible. And he's one to watch, and also badger him about getting photos, because I had to go to him to ask him for photos because he hadn't put a lot up of his entire force. So hopefully he'll put more photos up in the coming months. John, we'll go to you first. What's your? I mean, you've seen these in the flesh, right?
I have. I'm very fortunate to have have him serve me tapas in Spain in Freddie's collection of wonderful miniatures. It was what a day.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think this is such a good example, right, of just being the master, and I do mean the master of the 2 or 3 key techniques that really just elevates it. So for starters, I know I talked about this previously with Daily Heretics, but just like not really painting the black. The black is like is pretty black.
Yeah.
I am fortunate enough to own some of Jose's miniatures. He actually painted my Abaddon for me as a gift, and the black is just black. Like it's just like it's got some brown and some grey mixed into it, but it's essentially black. Like just look at the Immortals, for instance. They're black, but he's really nailed those tiny little details, like the eyes, the glow. Just super elevates that stuff, and then just the characters are just like they're just works of art. But realistically, like, what are you looking at here? No one gives a shit about the black armor panels, but like the faces and the non-metallic metals are just so good. That's all you need to concentrate on, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh god,
and all that's deliberate too.
Yeah, of course.
He's like a heresy army painter, but also an incredible just miniatures painter in general, where he's got enough art theory knowledge to create visually striking models. Like he deliberately knows how to draw the eye with painting techniques and with color placement and color choices, most importantly. And he just creates awesome striking models as a result. Like you said, the black's actually really simple. That he's done across the mooks of the Force, and that's a deliberate choice again. And so is like the trim, for example. But where the paint job elevates itself is, that brooding aesthetic, which is also deliberate, the subtle OSL, and it all adds to atmosphere, like we talked about before. And they're all deliberate choices. None of them are accidental. He definitely knows what he's doing. And I'll talk about his technical ability soon, I think.
Yes, we'll come back to this one. So let's have a look at the next one. So we're going to go over to Night Lords now with At Most Berg minis. Now, these are just the most divine Night Lords force that you can imagine. It's interesting you talk about that brooding element, because I think that this is the case. You've got a nice actual vibrant blue, and I think it's very, very difficult with Night Lords to strike that balance of trying to get vibrancy within the blue, but also being dark and not looking like Ultramarines. I think it's a real tightrope walk in a way that it perhaps isn't with other legions. There's amazing conversion work within this force. There's amazing 3D sculpts within this force as well. The faces are menacing, they are frightening. You know, particularly the image in the top left, that all combines together to create just the most beautiful Night Lord's force. And he's a man who's also done a tutorial. So if you want an army like this, you can go and check out his Instagram page, because he's done a tutorial about how to create the blue. What's your thoughts on this, Adam? What's your thoughts on this force?
Immediately, the blue punches you in the face, right? It's so rich and it's borderline obnoxious, but it's again, it's deliberately chosen, almost champion the blue and also dial back on the rest. So combined with, I mean, like the insane technical ability, all those elements combine to produce that particular style. And it's technical, like a heavy metal style paint job would be, or technical like Phil's army that we talked about before, but it does have that amazing color modulation in it as well that captures the eye.
Yeah.
And I think what he's done, he just does to a really, really high level and knows how to do it, and he just executes every time.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, I think it's just a mastery thing as well, right? That we just talked about. Like, I think the blue it's appreciated, and it's just like a couple of coats of blue applied over the top, but it just demonstrates such a kind of a confidence. He's also done some really cool stuff, some really interesting kind of 3D prints and bought some interesting stuff from other kits as well. I think again we talk, I know we've mentioned it already sometimes. I think when you talk about atmosphere, I think Night Lords by their very nature are one of the most atmospheric armies. I think it just suits their kind of their backstory and their aesthetic just so well. I'm just in love with this. I really am.
I think it also goes to show that like you don't need to create a complicated color scheme to make it good.
100% right. You haven't got to then go back in and add these like, oh yeah, 4 drops of this ink and 2 drops of this, and then this of thinner, and then this of this obscure product, and then just put that in the shadows and then modulate back up. It's like it's black, it's white, and it's blue.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
And yeah, do it to a high level.
Awesome.
Yeah, super impressive.
Cool. Let's have a look at the next one. So a man we all know, at Little Legend Studio, Mars from Little Legend Studio. So I think for me, we didn't talk about Mars in the development of the Heresy painting style, but I think that Mars is one of those key figures within the Heresy painting community that really kind of developed that style that we kind of talked about previously, which is that weathering combined with that artistry. That stylistic look, and none more so than with his own personal Blood Angels force, which you can see here, where he combines that battle damage, that weathering, with something which is very stylistic, with its highlights, its extreme highlights as well. But there's no Blood Angels army quite like it. It's so impressive, and he's done loads of content for the Heresy. What Heresy models hasn't done. I think you'd be really hard to find a Heresy model that he's not done. And every time he posts or creates something, especially if you've not seen it done in his style before, it's always so striking. His Jagatai Khan is just really, really impressive as well. But his Blood Angels force is something really special, but something that I think really defined that period around, again, that 2015 kind of period, 2018 period, where he created something really unique. And the Leviathan, with the Michelangelo Renaissance pictures on them is such an iconic.
It's a fresco. I mean, I'm not going to be paying a fucking fresco on a Dreadnought. Let's be honest.
No, but something that's really special. So yeah, he really helped define, I think, a lot of the Heresy style.
I totally agree. I think he is also one of those 2 or 3 kind of key pillars where you can you can tell a Miles model from a fucking mile away. And I think that's that's one of the biggest compliments that you could pay, is the fact that he has defined the style. Like, I think also it's also becoming the fact that some people will be like, oh, you've painted that in the Miles style. Because he has got such a kind of a distinct way about how he goes about doing things.
Yes,
I think it's, I mean, what collection, right? What, just where would we be without people like Miles today? I tell you what, stuff would look shitter than it does.
Yeah, and I've been personally, like, I was hugely influenced by Miles and his work, massively. I think you can just see that through my own painting. But yeah, absolutely. Without Miles, there would maybe no Miniatures. I think is a fair thing to probably say.
Fucking hell! Right, stop the pod.
Adam, what's your thoughts?
I think it's a bit of a milestone for us with regards to the overall heresy timeline.
Do you mean a milestone?
Yes, I do. And it's interesting that he's got like these Michelangelo-esque murals and stuff on his models, because I think that's almost like, or it feels like that's what he's been inspired. Miles' paint job, it feels quite Renaissance, and inspired by that Renaissance type of era. And there's lots of like chiaroscuro and lots of artsy elements of light and stuff involved. Even his brush work and application is quite artistic, and loose at times, and that just champions the overall aesthetic of his models and his force, which is what sets it apart, and it's always, I felt, run in parallel with the other trends that have sort of been coming through the heresy, like we spoke about earlier.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair assessment. Well, talking about kind of era-defining and important armies, let's have a look at the next one, which is at Herr Pum. So I think a gentleman of German origin. But I basically remember this force from
who doesn't remember this force?
Blogs and Bolter and Chainsaw, is it, or Bolter and Heresy, or whatever it's called, and it being a force that just blew me away within that sort of 2013, 2014 period, where he was way ahead of the curve in terms of conversions, way ahead of the curve in terms of the size of the force. I think that's the other thing I would say. While I was still knocking out a second tax squad, he created an entire World Eaters 8th assault company, and some absolutely incredible conversions. I mean, one of the ones I distinctly remember was using the something like the Medusan Immortals or the Iron Hands specific Legion models to create a plasma support squad that had been converted. And there was just lots of little things within at Herr Pum's work that was just really inspirational for Heresy. And I think this guy really is probably a huge influence on the early aesthetic of the Horus Heresy.
Yeah, super influential, right? He's almost like one of those genre-defining bands that like starts a new like subgenre. But I think that A's force was the first army that I saw that really captured just the cold, bleak brutality of the heresy.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, and it was just raw and super inspiring, and I'm sure he's touched everyone's hearts and inspiration along the way.
Yeah, let's not get slanderous, mate. This is real.
Yeah, it was just the size of the force, though. Honestly, like, well, I had a tiny little piddly heresy force. His thing, was absolutely huge. You know, the rate he was churning it out, these really cool conversions. You know, it was terrific. John, what's your thoughts on this force?
I think 100% right. Like Mr. Plume, we have a lot to thank him for. I mean, I think he's a true heresy hero, really, isn't he?
Yeah,
I think if there was a heresy army Hall of Fame, he would be a first round inductee into.
Oh yeah, that's a great that's a great shout. Yeah, that's a really interesting concept. The other thing I think the other thing I would say about this one is that it, as you say, Adam, it encapsulated a period. And I think that 2012, 2013, when Betrayal had dropped, and because World Eaters were the force that really encapsulated Isfan 3, it was the first force with Angron as the Primarch. They were really the early poster boys, I think, for the Horus Heresy. And I think that feeds into this kind of genre and era defining force, because these guys really were the poster boys, and this army really was the poster army of the Horus Heresy back in the day. So yeah, Hall of Fame, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Good shout.
Let's have a look at the next force. So another World Eaters force.
This guy again.
He's back. Ollie's World Eaters. So we won't dwell too long on this, but basically they're just incredible. And they are, I think the thing for me that stands out is always that bright blue. It just pops off the table, and it just is so striking on the tabletop, and it just looks fantastic. And I think with that bright blue, you know, he uses volumes on the shoulder pads that just stick out like a sore thumb. But because of that, it really is you know, it's rich and it's vibrant, and it just looks fantastic against the weathering that he does as well. Ollie, the other thing I would say, has a full tutorial. He's given you a step-by-step guide to create his World Eaters, and how he does the golds, how he does the white armor, how he does the blue as well. So definitely worth checking out, and make sure you go and follow him for more World Eaters goodness as well. Should we go to the next one? I'm conscious that Ollie's had enough last time. He's already appeared twice in this already.
All right, here you go. One of your boys again.
Yeah, Adam, do you want to talk through?
Yeah, Melbourne Heresy represent.
Yeah, do you want to talk through this one, because you've seen this far more than me and John. John have probably seen it.
I've seen it too.
And before he sold the army, it was massive. And he's a fond lover of dreadnoughts too.
Yeah,
I must admit, I did consider buying it, but getting it here was just prohibitively expensive, unfortunately. So
yeah, I just think he's just captured the feel and the brutality of the Legion really well in the models. And yeah, he's a good enough painter to execute that on the minis.
Yeah.
I do think World Eaters, they probably have the best scheme for a painter as well, to show off a range of different techniques, like the challenges of painting white, the vibrancy of painting blue or a secondary color, and then having the fun and the pleasure of weathering that back too. And Dom's just done a really, really good job.
Yeah, it's incredible. And also I think that it's very different from Herr Poom's World Aces Force, right? I mean, you can see here that this is, you know, heavily influenced. To some extent, you know, Richard Gray's work. You know, we talked earlier about that underlined, not on camera, but we talked before about that underlined scratches and things like that. And Dom has used a lot of those things, and it's certainly representative of how the painting style developed, but executed in his own particular style. That it looks absolutely incredible. And when I think of World Eaters, I definitely, this is a force I often think of. What's your thoughts, John?
Again, I think a needle mover. Like, I think this was again a relatively early army. Why are they always World Eaters armies?
I think
it's the best game.
Yeah, best game. But I think that it demonstrates, you're able to demonstrate artistic flair as well.
100%. Such a good canvas, isn't it? It's just because, like, as we know, like, white is such an absolute bastard to get right, and if you get it right, then I mean, you're 9/10 of the way there to a phenomenal looking army. Oh, it's just so good. So good. Like I said, I did want to buy it when it was up for sale. I was trying to
everybody considered
work out how to try and get it here, but I just couldn't cope with the like fucking $1,000 shipping, to be honest with you. So yeah, a shame. Never mind. Never mind.
Speaking of needle movers, these next two armies I think are definite.
What a guy.
So Andy Wardle. So if you're kind of new to Horus Heresy, you might have seen lots of Andy's work through the Sons of Horus. But when he was a young whippersnapper doing MKA in the early days, he was working very hard on an Ultramarines force, of which I think that a number of units within it, including Command Squad and Gilliman, have won him Golden Demons. This is an outstanding and beautiful force, and I think that for me, this is a really great example. And when we were talking about the influence, how Mars influenced me, well, Andy and this army has definitely influenced me. You've got Andy's precision and skill of that heavy metal style of painting, and I think it's best reflected in things like his flesh work on this army. And then you've got the bright blues and of the Ultramarines that are modulated in such a way to make it really interesting, and then you've got the whites that are modulated as well. But also along that force and within that blue is lots of weathering. And I took a photo of the back of a Spartan here, and you can see the weathering from the verdigris to the exhaust, to the rust, etc. That just combined to make a really seminal army and an outstanding looking force, and a really important force, I think, for showing off what could be done when harmonizing that high level of artistry combined with scale modeling techniques.
I mean, what else can you say? I mean, I think if I'm being perfectly honest, I think Andy's one of, if not my favorite painter. I think his ability to kind of blend techniques from sort of so many different places. I love his, I think, like I said, I've always said, and I mentioned it previously, his ability to like light a model.
Yeah.
It's just so subtle, but also so striking at the same time. I know it's a kind of a bit of an oxymoron, but I just like if I could paint like anyone, I'd want to paint like Andy. I think he's such a talented guy, but I think his just ability to kind of he's kind of super humble as well. Like, he's always talked to me about kind of people he really respects and kind of reaches out to when kind of he's not kind of quite sure on certain bits and bobs to do, and kind of quite happy to pass that information on to people. But also just the way that he kind of blends techniques from kind of so many different sources. Like, it's, he can do ultra realistic at the same time that he's doing high fantasy, and I think that's such a difficult kind of skill to kind of get right. So
mesh those things in a way that works well. Yeah, Adam, what's your thoughts on Andy's?
Yeah, I think just to add, John, that just comes down to making tasteful choices.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah,
and a lot of the time, especially with Andy's army projects and stuff, he does use that really definitive and quite restricted color palette as well. So he gives himself parameters and stuff to work within, but it really builds the emphasis to the end result and the models, and the whole army just looks incredibly unified.
Yeah,
I think why this army was such a needle mover for me personally is that he's got amazing technical ability, but and he's selected beautiful colors to use on this army project. But for me, it was the scale and the volume at which he painted this army and also documented it. I hadn't really seen anything like that before. And just from a pure army project point of view, it was just super inspiring to see.
Yeah, I suppose when it's broken down into those steps, you're able to see that it's achievable, right? I mean, the skill is a separate part, but if you can see the step-by-step element, see what he's putting into practice in the courses that he was doing at the time, I think inspirational and achievable all in the same breath. So yeah, great analysis. And speaking of another army, another very inspirational Ultramarines army is, of course, Matt Cain's Ultramarines army. Now, this is you will find, I think, and the lasting effect of this force is that if anybody ever does Ultramarines, basically they will have some element of conversion from Matt Cain's original Ultramarines force within their force. I know I've done it, but there are so many people that
they'll have Alexis Pollux as a Praetor.
Yeah, exactly that. You know, and I've used that Roman helm on Gilliman and put a head in to make it look like that. Now, this is again a Golden Demon winning force, or at least many of the units are. But very, very different from Andy's force. You know, if you put the two side by side, they're very different. But many of the same, things that we've been talking about are within this force as well. You know, that element of refined brushwork, using an airbrush, combining those scale modeling techniques with artistic flair and ability, making use of colors to best effect, thinking about the halo effects on particular models to frame the heads and elements of the particular model as well. But Matt also expanded this force beyond the Ultramarines, and he had a lot of Imperial Knights within it as well. And it was, it continues to be a super inspiring force with the most amazing conversions and the most amazing use of transfers. I've never seen anybody use transfers and overlapping transfers in a way that Matt has to create really unique kind of like patterns, pictures, images, and overlapping transfers is something definitely you can take away from Matt. And lift the quality of your own models up very quickly. It's just a clever way to do it. But yeah, absolutely inspirational force. You Adam, you've seen this force in the flesh, I think. Did he bring it to Melbourne when he came?
Yeah, he brought it over.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think it was every single miniature, but yeah, he brought most of it, and it was super special to see up close. And I think that for me, I'd probably say it was the most influential Heresy army, at least on my own projects, I'd say, because it was the first time that I really saw someone go above and beyond with regards to the conversion work.
Yeah.
And just take everything to the next level and dial it up to 10.
Yeah. The conversion work.
And the sole purpose of it was just to sell the whole aesthetic of the Legion.
Yeah.
And I just admire that dedication. And I think that's something that will always be special in this force. So I think it's highly influential, if not the most influential heresy force that we've seen over the last 10 or so years.
Yeah, brilliant. Cool, John. Any thoughts?
What else can I say?
Yeah. Perhaps you can talk about this next one, which is at MP_miniatures.
This is one of my favorite armies in the entire world right now.
Yeah, this is quite a relatively new force, Yeah,
I think it is. Yeah. It's blended some of the 40k kits really nicely. I think that's a super stunning job that he's done there. I think that's something needs to be commended. I just fucking love it. And again, like, it's just so atmospheric. Like, every single model that you see here is telling a story, and you know exactly what it's telling.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like I mean, the ability to have an army where basically every single model is a character.
Yeah.
Is, I think, just such a luxury.
Yeah.
And he's done it by really subtle uses of various different kind of kits. We've got the uses of kind of like slightly kind of out of kind of slightly like with the destroyers, like, they're painted in black as opposed to kind of in the traditional kind of color schemes. Just little details here and there, again, really atmospheric, and a lot of that's in the way that the pictures are shot, but at the same time, like, this is a fucking cool as hell army.
Yeah, I agree with that. We won't spend much more time on this, only to say that at MP Miniatures has lots of tutorials, and he does his tutorials for his Death Guard on his Instagram. So if you are thinking of doing a Death Guard force, make sure you go check it out. The next one I want to go to, perhaps Adam, you can talk us through this one. So this is at Whisperheads, because you've seen this in the flesh. That, you know, you talked about Matt Cain's force being, you know, really influential. I feel the same about this one. You know, with the level of conversions. And just the overall style of the force, which is very different from anything that we'd seen within the Death Guard of World Eaters. But do you want to just talk about this force briefly, because this was something special, wasn't it? You know, this army.
Another good Melbourne boy.
Mm. What do they give you in the water in Melbourne? Jesus.
Atmosphere again, right? I think this is probably the most similar in style to the White Scars army we saw before.
Yeah.
Whereas, it's so the aesthetic is driven in such a direction where it just creates something really special and unique.
Yeah.
What I like about what Dom's done with the main armor color is that he actually introduces like a lot of other subtle colors in there too. I think he must have done a tutorial somewhere along the line. But
he 100% has. Yeah, he has.
Yeah, I really like the sort of that bleak, bleached, washed out sort of look to the armor, but it's kind of it's got subtle tints of blue and brown and cream through it. When you rotate it, all those colors kind of give it a special kind of life.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's really special, among, of course, the technical ability and the weathering. I think he's just nailed the Death Guard look, and it just sells the Legion so well.
Yeah, it's and very, you know, we put, in terms of the best armies in the world, you know, MP Miniatures and the Whisperheads, they're the same forces, but totally different, and both work so well. You know, as you said right at the start, Adam, there's no one way to do these things, but if you're confident in your own style, then it really comes through with that army painting. John, did you want to? I felt like you wanted to say something there about that.
It's more a case of, actually, again, when we talk about sort of the stylized nature of things, really. Like, I think it harks back to what we were talking about a short while ago, is the fact that a few years ago, you probably would have seen a lot of these armies kind of looking largely the same, or certainly a lot of the same techniques with subtle variation. Whereas now we're seeing, like, we've just looked at two armies that are completely different, but so kind of instantly sort of so recognizable. And, like, you know, you couldn't, obviously you can tell them apart as to who painted which, but at the same time, like, you know, there's not one that is objectively better than the other.
No. Yeah, I think that's a great thing to say. And then we have the man himself at Full Circle Hobby. We have Adam and
Crash, move on.
Now,
next.
If you want to see a kind of a deeper analysis of Adam's force and kind of his thinking behind the force, then I would urge you to check out the last episode that Adam was on with us, where we were talking about events, and we talk about kind of his army in detail, and we won't rehash too much ground. Only to say, like we've talked about with Matt Cain's army, with Andy's army, Adam, that this, I think, is an inspirational force for many people about what you can do with storytelling, particularly the bases. I think always kind of strike me about your forces. You know, you're really telling that story around the fall of Prospero, which I think is quite an amazing thing for an army, because we actually haven't. We've maybe touched upon it, but we haven't talked too much about storytelling within a force, within an army, and I think course really does tell the story of the fall and decline and shattering of Prospero in just a wonderful way, rather than just a standardized a standard base. So a really special force. John, do you want to say anything on top of that just before we move on?
I mean, it's a benchmark, isn't it? Like, let's be honest. Like, I think if you want to start a Thousand Suns army, Adams is the one where you go to look for your inspiration. I think you go there and you perv for a little while, and then you figure out how you're going to even think about how you might emulate this.
That's a good way. Yeah.
And I think once you reach that point, I think you know you've made it. When you are like, I think, truth be told, the same of Samit's with Space Wolves. I think, like, it's if I was to say I want to do a Thousand Suns army, I'd go and look at what Adam's been doing and kind of work out what I'm going to do from there.
Yeah, what an accolade. Yeah, that's right. If you're an inspiration to somebody, I think that absolutely done. You have achieved godhood, really. And speaking of godhood,
Thanks,
a man
Chris.
whose force is absolutely humongous, a man who's been featured rightly in White Dwarf relatively recently, is at Dawn's Arrow, who's got some of the most fantastic Sons of
Oh, has he now?
Sons of Horus. And the level of conversion work that he goes to individualize his models is just absolutely stunning. And he's done lots of recent work with Mark 6 models where he's done all sorts of conversions to make each one unique. Is absolutely brilliant. And the thing I would say about Chris as well is that for me, what really defines his style is very, very high contrast. Lots of volume. Focus on volume.
You've got high contrast, Rob. This is turning up to 11, right?
Absolutely, right. Like he's, with his brushwork, he really dials it up. And but what he does is create really striking models. And I bet having a look at these in the flesh, I think would just be incredible. They must pop off the table. Adam, have you got any thoughts about Chris's Sons of Horus?
Yeah, it's obviously it's technically brilliant, but I do like your point of how high contrast it actually is.
Mm.
And I don't think it's something that I looked at straight away because my eyes are drawn to different parts of the model. But I guess it just goes to show that it doesn't necessarily have to be high contrast, or it really can be the highest of contrast.
Yeah.
Right. Nothing. There's no hard and fast set rules about what makes an army terrific. But Trish is just super dedicated to keeping such a high standard of painting across all of his models, across all of his armies. That dedication in itself is something to be admired.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as a result, they speak for themselves, really. Like it's just a stunning force.
Yeah, I think that, John, what you said before, if you were to look at Sons of Horus conversions and go look for ideas, Chris would be somebody
right?
you would have a look at. And it's interesting you say about documenting journeys, Adam. It's not something I've been conscious of until you said it, but Chris does document his journey with every unit, which allows you to unlock the conversions that he does around exactly how he goes about doing it. So it makes it super, super accessible. And the other thing I would say about Chris's work is that he has probably about 6 guides to Sons of Horus, power weapons, etc., for his Sons of Horus. So make sure you check them out, because every single one is different. One's done with Vallejo paints, one's done with GW paints. He's made it accessible for you. So make sure you go check it out, and make sure you say thank you if you ever do use this PDF, guys, because he spent a long time on gathering the information and making those PDF guides as slick as he possibly can. It's just an inspirational force, and definitely deserves to be on that, and rightly featured in White Dwarf. One of a couple of people really in this list have been featured in White Dwarfs, but it'd be nice if anybody's from White Dwarf is listening to this, then maybe go tap up these guys, because they definitely all deserve to be featured. Let's have a look at the next force. So we're going to move over to Salamanders now. So Jimmy is a bloke I've met a couple of times, and he's a really, really nice bloke and absolutely fantastic painter. And he learned from those MKA courses, and you can see that through this style. But I suppose one thing I would say about Jimmy is that the culmination of those things was that he ended up getting a golden demon for himself, having learned all the tips and tricks on the MKA course. He then goes and wins a golden demon, which is absolutely fantastic, and then featured a couple of times on the Forge World website. I think that because this is a fair few years old now, and I don't think he's done a load of work with Salamanders, but he, I think for me, was somebody who you looked at who was just a normal bloke. He painted well. He wasn't, the godlike level that Richard Gray was, but he made it seem like any person could achieve an outstanding army and win a golden demon in a similar way that Sai did when we looked at Secret 30K Geeks work. And I think for me, he really pushed me to try and be the best painter I could, because Jimmy was a talented painter, but he worked hard at it. He wasn't naturally gifted. You can see the development over time of his work through Instagram. And for me, he's a really big inspiration, just going, actually, anybody with hard work and dedication can achieve, a golden demon, a prize, an award, or whatever. And I think that of that time and of that period, it was a really important army within the UK, and it continues to stand the test of time as well. I'm not sure, John, did you ever see? I'm not sure you ever saw this force in the flesh.
Not in the flesh, no. I know it's an absolute travesty. So I've only seen pictures. I've never had it in the hand. But it looks stunning. And again, it's just like everything about it looks just so subtle. But it's that classic thing, right? It's that you get so many little things right. You haven't got to make like a big deal about everything, but just so many little pieces just add together to make such a kind of an overall kind of strong impact.
Yeah, absolutely.
Aggregated marginal gains. That's what I was looking for. Right?
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Well, I'll do the next one as well, but then I'll hand over to Adam for the one following, because perhaps he can talk us through the next one. So the next one is at Captain Forge. So another Salamander's force. If you've ever seen Andy's army, his Salamander's army, it is one of the most beautiful things you will ever see. It's absolutely amazing, and every time he paints a unit, it just gets better and better and better. I mean, the 2 drop pods that he created were stunning. And I think that what I love about this force in particular is that you've got that really bright popping green combined with this absolute batter to fuck aesthetic, and it just those the weathering just looks so good on bright colors, and he's implemented it in a way that just looks fantastic. And the photos on the bottom I think are a better representation of what his army looks like than on the 2 on the far right. But the 2 on the far right, the conversion work that he puts into his army as well is just staggering. Every miniature is converted to represent the salamanders, where it might be tempting just to create an infantry squad just out of the box. But actually, he converts it and converts each one individually, and it's a force that just is absolutely stunning, and slightly different from Jimmy's, much more battered, but it doesn't lack because of that. It's a really absolutely outstanding force. But if we go to the next one, John, because then maybe Adam can talk us through this particular one. So we're back again to our Spanish friend. So Adam, do you want to talk us through this one?
Yeah, so like I said before, Jose is just really deliberate with where he wants your eye to go. And I look at the 3 images down the bottom, and then I'm just directly drawn to the face.
Yeah.
And I think he's probably the best painter of faces at that scale. Yeah. He's certainly my favorite. And they're just so like human-like and evocative, right?
Yeah.
And then of course you've got the stunning non-metallic metal as well. It's just rendered so cool. It's got texture. It's still got atmosphere as well. You can almost like reach out and touch it. It almost feels that real.
Yeah.
He's just super high level painter, and a little bit underrated, if you ask me.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that one. And then, John, I'm going to go back to you for the next one, because we're going to go back to at Legiones Astartes, but this is another person within the Legiones Astartes umbrella, which is Anuj. Do you want to talk about this Alpha Legion?
Absolutely, because we were discussing and we were like a lot of, I think because of the way that they've always been painted, I think a lot of Alpha Legion armies end up looking quite similar.
Yeah.
I think it's very difficult to make them stand out because you either done a metallic pre-shade with Tamiya clears, or you do a metallic pre-shade with now GW contrast paints.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
And because of that, there's not going to be an awful lot of kind of like segregation in terms of quality. They're all going to be pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
But they're all going to be pretty fucking similar.
They're all standardized in a way, aren't they?
Yeah, and that's kind of quite bizarre because I think it's kind of one of the only legions that that I think has had happened to it, really. Even we talk about Thousand Sons as well. I think there's like, even in the way that they've been done, there's a lot more that people do with them in terms of their kind of color modulation. But anyway, by the by, this is a great army. I think it's important to shout out Anuj anyway, because he is instrumental in the game that we all know and love, right? But secondarily, this is a great force, like a really striking, cohesive, coherent, just really well painted army. I think you were saying as well, like this kind of, when you first came across this army, this kind of came out of nowhere at you, didn't it, Rob?
Yeah. So I had met Nuge, I think, first time at an event at Darksphere, and I sort of swaggered in and thinking, oh, I'm gonna pick up Best Army award, no problem whatsoever. And I saw Anuja's force, and that completely just shattered my illusions about that. The level of detail that he went to, and again with that force, I think it's of the time, which is that he's got lots of underlined scratches in the same way that Jimmy's force at that time does. Definitely of that period, that 2015 to 2018, 2019 periods. When everybody was doing a similar thing. But I think the thing about Anuja's color scheme was that it was that turquoise blue, but it had purples within the shadows.
Yeah.
It became really, really interesting. He's then used stencils to create kind of hydra scales in places, which again makes it interesting, and things that you can't necessarily do with an Alpha Legion force. Now, of course, you can create hydra scales, but not in the way that you can with Anuja's force. And then you've got also quite a wide variety of rewards of treachery units as well.
Yeah, the Beowulf Warback is so good. They look properly demonic.
Yeah, it's absolutely the Beowulf Warback are a unit that really, really stand out. And I think they look way better in blue than Anuja's
100%.
than they do in their
absolutely cannot agree more.
In their crimson. And it's also a huge force as well. Like I've seen it at Greetings of a Warp event where he was displaying it, and he doesn't talk about his army painting much. I don't think he gets much time to hobby really, but it is for me it is the best Alpha Legion force I've ever seen or have seen online, because it is
cannot agree more.
It's just so interesting, and each thing that you look at, another another thing reveals itself, and I think that as a result, it's an absolutely stunning force. Yeah, brilliant.
For sure.
Should we have a look at the next one? So a second appearance from this man, from Matt Kane, and what a fucking army! I mean, if you think about just like gold, washed, dry brush, or whatever. Well, this man completely shattered the idea that Custodes armies needed to be simple. Adam, do you want to talk us through this? Because I'm just having an embolism from how good this is. It's just incredible, this force.
Yeah, the gold is really cool and super interesting. It definitely kind of started pushing the envelope on some true metallic metals across armies.
Yeah.
But what I find the most inspiring about this force is just some of the conversion work.
Yeah.
And making his force kind of align to what I think is that just the apex of the Custodes, which is the old Visions of Heresy artwork of them, and just assimilating those two looks together, bringing that to his army is just super special.
Yeah.
And I like the color choices too, like the purple as the spot color, the black for the vehicles and that sort of stuff too. It was a little bit left of center for a Custodes force, but just absolutely nailed. I think it's terrific.
The execution was just incredible. The conversion works were nuts, and huge inspiration to my own work. Yeah, Matt has been a huge inspiration to me, and that Custodes force in particular has been as well. Should we have a look at the next one? John, do you want to talk about this one? Because you saw this.
I don't want to come off of this one for the time being, honestly, but never mind. Off we go. This is a sleeper army. So this belongs to a wonderful man who we recently met called Chris. who is at tangentical_miniatures, and we were hosting an event a little while ago. We know Chris kind of from way back when, and I think he's been kind of playing 40k for a little while and various little bits and bobs, and all of a sudden he just rolls up to our event with this Mechanicum army.
Yeah,
it's like, shit, what the fuck have you been hiding this?
Yeah, it certainly felt like that, didn't it?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, it was insane.
It was just, again, I think it was, do you know what it kind of feels of the time? I think because it's kind of got that sort of, again, with Adam's kind of, realism blended with like kind of like fantasy. Like you could totally imagine it's like basically gone kind of like ultra realistic, but if it was like made by Nintendo.
Yeah.
If you kind of understand what I kind of mean by that.
I do know what you mean, because it's got there are elements that are very, very bright to it. It pops as well.
Yeah, it really does. Super stands out.
It's got a very specific style, I think, to his painting.
Yeah.
But it I think I think the problem with Mechanicum is that it's hard to make them look decent beyond just red cloaks and silver elements that are dry brushed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Whereas what he had done was put attention to detail into every single model in a way that I think we had not necessarily.
Yeah, it was things like every single power cable was like individually painted, and it wasn't just like, here's a bunch of cables, they're all red cables.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, here's a little bit of this, here's a little bit of that. It was even so much down to some of the like decal work. There was like a tiny little vent, so the tiny little vent got a tiny little decal to warn you of the hazardous, noxious toxins that were being like spewed from this vent. It was all the tiny little intricacies, coupled with a really obviously good technical painting ability.
Yeah.
Then you've got kind of like, again, there's some real like, how do I like, without this is going to actually sound a bit of a backwards compliment, but like you look at some of the like work on the cloth, and there's like, it's not like it's like glazed in and like super soft blended perfectly. It just works. Like this, everything about it works.
Yeah.
And I don't think, like, I think you could look at this as a painter with a reasonable amount of ability and see the stuff in the hand and go, fucking hell, this looks so good. But also at the same time, I could paint this.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Absolutely. But it's a case of taking your time and taking care. He's taking care over every single aspect of the army, and it's just wonderful.
Yeah, it's tres good.
Yeah.
Adam, you've not seen this army in the flesh before. I mean, I don't know how much of it you've seen, but what's your initial kind of like thoughts on the force, and like with the Mechanicum armies you've seen in Australia, is that the same for you? Do you find that it's just a lot of like reds and silvers, or
not at all? Actually, my headphones just died, so apologies if I sound a little bit different, because this is just the microphone from the computer now.
That's all right. That's great.
Yeah. So, funny you say that, because actually last year at my event, some of the two armies that walked away with painting awards were both Mechanicum armies.
Interesting.
One was a beautiful blue, almost like a cobalt ultramarine blue Mechanicum army by Ryan. He's at Ryan Paints, or Rhino Paints, sorry, on Insta. And you can check out some of his stuff there. And the second was almost like a tealy sort of muted blue. And they were on like terrific swamp sort of bases that had also sort of like never been seen, especially for a Mechanicum army too, right? Because everyone always thinks like desert when they think about Mechanicum, but there's Forge Worlds on all sorts of planets, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And they were done by Michael, who is at Kerbox on Insta as well. He's from Sydney. They both walked away with painting awards. And their armies are incredible. What I like about this one though is that the Atropos, especially, is that outside of war, I think it could pass for like a futuristic construction vehicle of some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Right.
Yeah.
And to me that it feels like it's a practical machine, you know, and it just helps to sell that whole look of the Mechanicum. And it's just a cute little tidbit that I kind of like about the army. But yeah, I mean, like hazard stripes, red. What's not to love about the way it pops, right?
Absolutely, yeah, 100% agree with that. Right, let's have a look at it. So we're on our last few. Actually, we haven't got many left. So we are on to Painting Mayhem. So this is Lee. Lee is a Golden Demon winning artist, and he is incredibly talented. And I would definitely just put him in the artist bracket, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
For what he's able to achieve. So I think that when me and John saw this, it was unlike anything that we had ever seen before. In fact, it came completely out of the blue.
Well, what was most irritating was the fact that my Leviathan from my Black Templars army was winning the painting competition that event, and then all of a sudden I saw Henry just kind of subtly move it to the side slightly. Got this fucking night down in this place.
So it was like unlike anything that we had seen before. Now, I think one of the things I would say is that it's very different to the aesthetic that we might assume for the Horus Heresy. You know, there's no battle damage on it. It was, you know, not even, I don't think, any weathering powders. I could be wrong about that. But what was especially unique was the amount of freehand that was on this force and the conversion work as well. You know, he's carved into the resin, and then put little tiny cogs into it, and then put blue resin over the top of that so you could see the cogs underneath. And it is something special to behold Lee's force.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just like indescribably good.
Yeah.
Like, again, you could look at it for an hour and you wouldn't see everything that's on the model.
Agreed. Yeah.
And you know, Lee's such a nice guy, and he's so kind of happy to sort of talk about what he's doing and give you kind of little pointers, and just so disciplined. He's just, I don't think he sits down for like big sessions. He just does like little and often and practice.
Yeah.
And,
so yeah, really very, very unique army. You know, when we have a look at those that we've seen before, but something that really it is super special. Adam, any thoughts on this one?
You can tell it's a labor of love, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
I don't think anyone can stay that dedicated on a project and not love it to smithereens.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
super different, like you're saying. Clean and heaps and heaps of technical freehand and stuff that, you know, we don't usually associate with Heresy armies and stuff. But again, it's like another amazing army that's also an outlier in terms of the teams, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, agreed with that. Right, let's have a look at the next one. So on our last three. So we'll whiz through this because I'm very conscious that Adam has been here for hours and hours and hours. It must be something like 1 o'clock in the morning for you, Adam.
Yeah, close to.
But we've got Amphiarius, so we've got Baz. We all know and love Baz for his conversions, but his Custodes, his Heresy era Custodes, are just magnificent and very different from Matt Cain's Custodes. You know, definitely fits within the heavy metal style. Baz has a very precise heavy metal style. You know, edge highlighting here, there, and everywhere. But it's not, you know, it's not any less because of that. It's absolutely the precision that he puts into his work is just incredible. And in fact, he threw in that shield captain with a beard just in for a punt because his mate was just like, why not just put it in? And then he ended up walking away with the Golden Demon out of it. And that just goes to show you the level of quality that Baz just does in everything he approaches, be it conversion work or painting. Really, really special force. And then finally, for our final army, is at New Aurora Painting. Now, you may recognize this from some years back because this was featured in a Warhammer community article. Very few Heresy armies have actually been featured in Warhammer community articles. Now, Adam, I know that yours has. Was it an Australian specific Warhammer community article, or was it the UK team that got into contact with you? And
no, I think it was just the guys from the UK. I think, yeah.
But Adam,
that feels like a decade ago too.
Yeah. So Adam has with his Ultramarines before, but Harry has with this, and we thought it was worth putting this in because I think that it is an absolutely fantastic ball. The level of conversion work that Harry has gone to in this force is really quite something, and I think this is just like a third of it as well. You know, his force is absolutely massive.
Oh, it's unreal. Yeah.
Definitely worth putting in those top armies for something that's just so unique.
I think as well, like, and I don't mean to be disrespectful here, but like, I don't think it's technically like the best painted. But if you talk about an army as like a cohesive, like kind of like project, I think it's unrivaled. Genuinely, I think there's so much care and attention that's gone into everything, and it is painted brilliantly. Like it genuinely is. But it's just like, as having seen the whole collection on the tabletop, which I've been lucky enough to see a couple of times, it's just mind blowing. I think when you think of like a militia that's been raised off a planet in either defense of whatever it is they're wanting to defend, like this is, again, when you talk about benchmark armies, this is a benchmark.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%, 100% agreed. And then finally, we'll go to our next one. And we just want to mention these guys because, in particular, I think it's also important to talk about the conversion work within Horus Heresy Miniatures. And Mike and Jack, Fell-Handed and Anvils of Conor, are two people who, over the past years, have really tried to push the envelope of heresy sculpting, and to some, you can include Baz within it, but he got included for his Custodies. But these are people who are constantly being creative, inventive within the Horus Heresy scene, and showing people what you are able to do with conversions, with green stuff as well. And we thought that it was important just to give a nod to those guys for their conversions.
Yeah.
Anybody want to add to that and say anything about that?
Both very inspirational, I think, to be honest with you. Both nice guys, both with strong kind of committed ideas as to what they want to see out of their armies.
Yeah.
Jack especially obviously has got kind of quite a sizable painted army now, but realistically, let's be honest, I think the painting is kind of a means to an end. What he loves is cutting stuff up and sticking stuff together in new and kind of inventive ways, and more power to him, because he is, again, I think, a benchmark, I think, when it comes to kind of character customization. So
absolutely, yeah, 100%.
I think if you do aspire to, or you can use all the painting techniques in the world, but I think what will really also help to elevate your army is just the level of conversion work that goes in just to take it to the next level.
Yeah, that's definitely true. That's something that's been seen throughout these forces, hasn't it? Like it
is a common theme, right, throughout all these forces, and just helps individualize the forces, as well as make them something unique and special, and it all just adds, right, to the ultimate aesthetic to what you sort of want to achieve. So I think definitely check out these guys. They're a great source of creativity and inspiration and stuff, and then hopefully it can inspire some of your own projects.
Well, let's wrap up this conversation, talk about those pillars, about what exactly is within our army, because I'm conscious after this discussion we'll let you go, Adam, because I'm sure you probably need to go to bed ready for work for Monday.
I've got an RDO tomorrow.
Okay, okay. So, um, so, well, let's talk about conversion work first of all. So, as you say, one of the things that has made all of these armies unique is the fact that there are often, not in every army, but there are often levels of conversion within it, and that conversion could be for Dark Angels having just their in bodies, but having Dark Angels heads. So they could just be a simple kit bash or a helmet swap. But some could be really going above and beyond. So, for example, with Matt Kane's Custodes, he's combined multiple kits, done lots of green stuff work. Created purity seals and sashes and things like that. So there is something to be said that one of the pillars of a great painted force or a great army is that there's a level of conversion within that. I think would that be fair to say?
I think so. I think that's definitely one of the elements, one of the core elements, in order to make a force that stands out for sure.
Yeah. And then let's talk about next up, which is basic. So again, we didn't spend too much time talking about the story, because often the basing contextualizes your army. It tells a story, be it, the World Eaters ransacking Luceria or fighting on Armatura, or a Raven Guard force fighting on the Black Sands of Isfahan or something like that. We haven't spent too long talking about it, but I think one of the other themes that comes across with this best painted army is that the basing is harmonious, that there's a link between all the models. They're all contextualized in some way. They don't necessarily have to have the downfall of Prospero or whatever, but they do need to have coherence. And but those bases can also be simple. With Andy Wardle's, Andy's army was very, very simple in terms of its basing, and he let the models do the heavy lifting for him. But whereas your force, Adam, your basing really does tell a story, and that it's interesting that actually to have a great painted force, it needs to be harmonized, but not necessarily massive built up bases or whatever. Or what's everyone's thoughts on that then?
It's super important and probably goes a little bit unnoticed, or has in this chat anyway. But just flicking back through the images like John's doing now, all the bases are actually really quite stylized. And they're all kind of set apart from one another as well. And it just gives more context to the models or to the aesthetics that you want to create in your force. Whether that's narratively putting the army in a particular time or setting or location, or whether that is purely a choice based on your vision of how you want the army to look, or whether it's a more technical choice of, hey, I need these models to kind of stand out a little bit more, or maybe just give me a little bit more of a backdrop or contrast to my miniatures. They're all considerations that you're probably going to have to make in order to elevate your models.
That's interesting. It's interesting you talk about contrast, because that's often a classic thing when you're basing your force. If you haven't got a clear idea about where exactly or what story you're trying to tell, you then look at the paint job and you go, okay, well, what's going to contrast best? So Dom's World Eaters, Ollie's World Eaters, all have reds within their bases, which contrast so nicely against the blue, right? Whereas yours and Matt's armies are both on Prospero, so therefore have to tell a story, through the basing. So it's interesting. So I guess for that one, we chalk it up to basing needs to be cohesive, it needs to be coherent, it needs to set the context for your miniatures, but there's no hard and fast rule about what exactly makes the best painted army when it comes to basing, which I think is interesting. So let's talk about painting them, and this is a much a bigger conversation. So what seems quite clear to me is that there's no one style of painting which is the all-out winner. We had MP Miniatures with a rattle can with AK Interactive Rust effects to paint his. We then had Matt Kane's Ultramarines, which use an airbrush and then is finesse with a brush. We then got yours, Adam, which is Tamiya clears over a silver, pre-highlight, but with quite a lot of effort and time spent into the metallics and things like that. There doesn't seem to be a hard and fast rule around what makes a best painted heresy army. And certainly I think that we've definitely shattered, or some of these armies have shattered, that illusion that everything needs to be high contrast, right, to be the best painted armies on the planet. But there are obviously common themes. So what's your guys' thoughts about the painting? What makes an army the best painted army on the planet, best painted heresy army on the planet?
Fucking hell. I mean, that's the thing, right? Because it's all completely subjective. Like what speaks to me might necessarily speak to you, and might speak to Adam. Like I want to see like technical brushwork is the thing that like gets me kind of a bit like fizzy.
So like Jose's work, right?
Yeah, 100% right. That is like that for me is like I want to look for like technical ability as opposed to just like sounds a bit strange saying it because like especially my son's horror army is quite high contrast by comparison to what I normally do, but that's deliberately because like the majority of the army is going to be black, so I wanted the non-black elements to stand out quite a lot, so I probably pushed the contrast of that a little bit more than I would normally do. But I tend to find most of my armies are quite kind of muted.
I mean, but what's important there is that there has to be technical ability. I mean, I go back to MP Miniatures because the actual models themselves are quite simple. But when you look at the faces, they are creamy. They are very, very well painted.
Oh, I'd rather have a more basic. It's faces and bases, right? That's what really sells everything, right? So like, and that's something like from a personal perspective, I've been really trying to push recently is like my flesh. Like I don't think I've been that good up until now, or certainly like I've not tried particularly hard. So yeah, no, I think that something like Jose's is kind of where I am. It is what I suits because my kind of was what I want to see, but that's obviously not a right or wrong.
Yeah, of course. Adam, I mean, it's a big conversation, right? But I mean, what are the pillars?
Huge conversation.
Yeah, but what are the pillars that make the best paint?
I think from what we've seen today, it doesn't matter what style your army's painted in, as long as it gives you or the viewer a really nice look and feel, right? That's what it comes down to. You either like it or you don't like it due to the look and feel. And I think look and feel is attributed to your color choices and how eclectic you might be with choosing color and choosing methods of painting. But I think what's most important is really having a clear idea and focus on what you want it to look like, and then really driving that home.
Yeah, so that's really fascinating. So sorry to interrupt there, Adam. That's really fascinating because one of the things that you drew out from Waterbeast's work, from Josh's work, was that he had a clear vision from the army. And actually, what you're saying there is that also to be a best army in the world, you have to have planned out quite clearly your vision for the force. And that comes before any models are built, because that obviously involves the conversions. And time and energy and effort is spent on mood boarding these things, thinking about it, writing down your thoughts, researching on Instagram, researching on blogs, and researching on Facebook, etc., etc. But actually, to be your best army, you can't just simply go, I'm going to buy 10 guys and then just paint them and hope and dream that this will be the best painted force on the planet.
Yeah.
You actually have to invest an awful lot of time at the planning stage before even cutting a model off a sprue. Right?
I can't agree more. I can't agree more. I mean, like, I've done that with my Thousand Suns. You know, I sat on those ideas for like 10 years. And even the new force that I'm planning next, which is the Salamanders, which I've been, talking about forever, even though I haven't done anything. I've just been constantly conceptualizing ideas and how I want it to look and how I want it to feel. And come painting time, I know what I want to do, and I know what look I want.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So we've got some common themes there. So we've got conversions, we've got planning, we've got basing, we've got the technical ability of painting, we've got also within that the feel of the force, which is much more
the atmosphere,
which is very insubstantial. You can't to be able to define, but as you say, the atmosphere, which are 5 key elements there, which those 5 elements I think is a good place to leave this conversation. So we hope you enjoyed this before we kind of roll out with the last of it. Do you need to head off, Adam, or can you just stay for 5 minutes just while we wrap up?
Of course I can stay.
Super. And we'll say our thank yous then at the very end of the show. John, do you want to lead us out with just very quickly our roll of honor and our last?
Well, it's not going to be quite so quick because we've had to make even more space on the page.
Almost 60.
Yeah, thank you so much to everyone. You'll all be receiving your Castle Crusher kits over the course of the next sort of few months. And if you've already forgotten what we're talking about, because it has been a long old episode, this one, then just scroll back to the beginning. You can kind of hear all about it, or head over to Patreon and search for Heresy Hammer. But just very, very quick, one, and in no particular order, huge extra special thanks to Henrik Rasmussen, Lurpy Wargaming, Alistair Croxon, Jared Cope, Benjamin Lengacker, Matthew Karovasis, Taranis, Andy Dudley, Stephen Daniel, Gareth Morris, Jack Stillwell, Lewis Hibbins, Mark Gallagher, Unexplained Miniatures, Matthew Fuller, Ethan Brawl, Big T Painting, Callum Falcus, Clayton Unru, WH_Black Panzer, Craig the Celt, Kevin Abramo, Nicholas Drax, Andrew G, James Apostate Terrain, That Guy Lazar, Saigon Sadler, Chris Levitt, Julian, Mark Ainsworth, Dale Barrett, Kerry Love, Alex Robinson, Tom Spear, Harry Nails 40k, Richard Harris, Chthonic Waterbeast, Simon Whitehouse, Pete King, Ashley Bowley, Pete Day, Al, Randy Overland, Igor Povolotsky, Bradley Slutz, Patrick Greenstreet, Mike Dorset Wolf, Richard Willis, Tom Hayward, Neil Atherton, Ben Robinson, Ben Ide, Gore Crow, John McCardle, and Thomas Silverstone. Thank you very much. Also, some additional shout outs to the sponsors. Bits Monster. So, as we say all the time, if you need bits and bobs, don't bother doing it yourself. Want to save a bit of cash, then head over to bitsmonster.com for all your bits needs. They sell bits of kits, full kits, box splits downs, everything you can need. They have a huge and ever-growing selection. They've just moved into bigger premises. They're able to hold more stock and get it out to you quicker. They have fast international shipping at low cost and free UK shipping for any orders over £25. And if you use code Heresy Hammer at the checkout, you will get an additional 10% off. And then also another shout out to Dan from Gate 3D. So Gate 3D are doing a lot of the printing for the Castle Crusher alongside the guys at Beowulf. So huge thanks for that. They also produced the the large scale ones for us that you saw at the events and have been featured in the promotional materials. So thank you so much for that too. Again, really kind of like high output print on demand service. So if you need any prints doing, I know that they've just got some exclusive prints from some of our friends, noticeably Cornell, Company of Bitter Iron's been doing some bits and bobs, and I believe Dan is printing those exclusively. So if you check out at gator.3d on Instagram or Gator 3D Printing over on the Face Tubes. And lastly, if you would like us to chat about your minis and bits and bobs on the show, then please hashtag them Heresy Hammer on Instagram. Please do like, subscribe, comment, and share. I want to say an extra special thanks to Rob on this one because he's put an awful lot of time into putting the PowerPoints together and going through stuff. So I think my job is relatively easy, and this is just turn up with a hangover and talk on. So do consider giving us a subscribe just based on his hard work alone. Leave a comment, like if there's anything that we've missed or anything you want to kind of comment on anyone down to doing a part 2, because we've got enough content probably to do a part 2. So if there's anything else that we've missed that you want to suggest, then leave in the comments below and share it amongst your friends. If you've got any kind of any correspondence you want to kind of send to us, any lists you want us to review, then fire them over to heresyhammer30k@gmail.com. And largely, if you would like to support us, you can do so over on the Patreon. So head to Patreon, search for Heresy Hammer, and join our community over there for loads of additional content, giveaways, and free swag. Right. Anything I've missed?
No, just a thank you to Adam for coming on this monster bumper show, because it's been a really long one.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly.
No problem.
It's been a marathon, this one. They're not normally cool. Well, massive thanks to Adam, and thanks to everyone who we featured, and thanks for letting us use your images and share stuff and talk about your works. Thanks for painting those miniatures and being such a huge inspiration to us and many others in the community. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one soon.
Yeah.
Say goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Goodbye.